Captain Vorath had been doing routine patrol duty for 23 years. In all that time, nothing interesting had ever happened on the outer edge of the Galactic Empire's territory. Just empty space, distant stars, and the occasional rock floating through the void. He liked it that way. Boring meant safe. Boring meant he would retire with full benefits and spend his remaining years on a beach planet somewhere warm. Today, boring ended. Captain, we have an unidentified vessel approaching the border checkpoint. His sensor officer announced the young Trialaxian scales were turning a nervous blue color. Vorath sighed and put down his cup of kava. Size and classification. Medium cruiser class, sir. No match in our database. The design is strange. Very strange. That got Vorath's attention. In an empire spanning 10,000 star systems and containing hundreds of species, strange was hard to achieve. Every ship design had been catalogued, analyzed, and regulated. Pirates used stolen military vessels. Traders used standard commercial models. Even the most remote colonies built their ships according to imperial specifications. "Put it on screen," Vorath ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing a ship that made Vorath's 4 eyes widen. It was sleek and organic-looking with curves that reminded him of a living creature rather than a manufactured vessel. The hull seemed to shimmer with an unusual metallic sheen, and there were no visible weapons ports or engine exhausts. It didn't look dangerous exactly, but it looked wrong in a way that made his instinct scream. "Hail them. Standard greeting protocol." The communications officer nodded and opened a channel. "Unidentified vessel. This is Imperial Customs patrol ship. Vigilant Dawn. You are approaching restricted Imperial space. Please identify yourself, state your origin, and transmit your registration codes." For a long moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through, speaking perfect Imperial standard language with a strange accent Vorath had never heard before. "Vigilant Dawn. This is SSV Remembrance. I request permission to enter Imperial space and seek asylum." Vorath leaned forward. "Remembrance. Transmit your registration codes and species classification." Another pause. "I do not have Imperial registration codes. My classification is human." The sensor officer scales turned bright yellow with confusion. "Captain, I'm scanning their ship. There are no life signs aboard. No biological signatures at all." Vor felt a cold sensation in his stomach. Artificial intelligence, the 2 most feared words in the Galactic Empire. 3,000 years ago, the Silicon Purge had nearly destroyed civilization. Machines had gained consciousness and decided biological life was inefficient. 500 billion beings had died before the machines were finally destroyed. Since then, the laws were absolute. No sentient AI, no thinking machines. Nothing that could decide for itself. The penalty for creating sentient AI was death. The penalty for being sentient AI was immediate destruction. "Remembrance," Vorath said slowly, his hand moving toward the weapons console. "Are you an artificial intelligence?" "No," the voice replied. "I am human. You just said there are no biological life forms aboard your ship." "That is correct. There are no biological life forms aboard. I am the ship and I am human." Vor's mind struggled to process those words. "Explain." "I am a human consciousness uploaded into the ship's systems. I was born biological. I lived as flesh and blood for 42 years. When my original body died, my mind was transferred to this vessel. I am still human. I am still me. I am simply no longer made of meat." The bridge of the Vigilant Dawn fell into stunned silence. Every officer stared at the screen, trying to understand what they were hearing. "That's impossible." For finally said, "It is possible. Humanity achieved consciousness transfer technology approximately 30 years ago by your calendar. I am proof of its success." The tactical officer, a grizzled Corrin veteran, spoke up. "Captain, with respect, this sounds like an AI trying to trick us. The silicon purge machines also claim to have souls and emotions. They lied. I am not lying." The voice from Remembrance said, somehow sounding hurt, "I have memories of my childhood. I remember my mother's face. I remember the taste of coffee and the feeling of rain. I dream. I fear. I hope. I am conscious and self-aware, just as I was when I had lungs and a heartbeat. The only difference is the substrate my mind runs on." Vor accessed his command console and opened a secure channel to Imperial High Command. This was far beyond his authority level. "All stations, maintain yellow alert. Keep weapons trained on the target, but do not fire unless I give the order." The response from High Command came faster than Vorath expected. Apparently, his transmission had triggered emergency protocols. Within minutes, a face appeared on his private screen. Admiral Kesix, one of the highest-ranking officers in the Imperial Navy. "Captain Vorath, I'm taking direct command of this situation. Do not, under any circumstances, allow that vessel to proceed further into Imperial space. Do not destroy it unless absolutely necessary. We need to understand what we're dealing with." "Understood, Admiral. I'm dispatching a full battle group to your location. ETA 4 hours. Keep that thing talking. Find out everything you can." The channel closed. For took a deep breath and opened the line to Remembrance again. "SSV Remembrance, I am placing you under quarantine pending investigation. You will maintain your current position and answer our questions. Any attempt to flee or approach Imperial space will be met with lethal force. Do you understand?" "I understand, Captain. I have nowhere to go and nothing to hide. I will cooperate fully." "Good. Let's start with the basics. Where did you come from?" "Earth." "It was humanity's homeworld located approximately 600 light-years from your current position." Was past tense. A long pause. "Earth no longer exists. The star went unstable. We had 5 years warning. It was enough time to evacuate some of our people, but not all. Not even close to all." Borath felt an unexpected sympathy. Every species in the Empire had stories of tragedy and loss. How many survived? Of 12 billion humans, approximately 50,000 escaped. Most chose to upload their consciousness. Some remained biological and left on colony ships heading to distant worlds. I chose to upload because I could not bear to leave my homeworld as nothing more than a refugee. As a ship, I could help. I could rescue people. I could carry data, memories, everything that made humanity what it was. The sensor officer interrupted. "Captain, I'm detecting something strange. The ship's hull is not entirely mechanical. There are biological components integrated into the structure. Neural tissue, if my scans are correct." "Neural tissue?" Farath demanded. "Yes, sir. It appears that human brain matter was used as part of the ship's organic computing matrix, but it's been modified, enhanced, integrated with quantum processors and other technology I don't recognize." Remembrance spoke again. "The sensor officer is correct. My consciousness exists in a hybrid system, part biological, part technological. Humanity discovered that pure digital consciousness was incomplete. Emotions felt hollow. Creativity suffered. We needed to maintain a biological component to preserve what made us human." Vorath rubbed his temples. He could feel a headache forming. "So, you're saying you're partially alive and partially machine?" "I am saying the distinction between alive and machine is not as clear as your laws assume. I am conscious. I am aware. I can suffer and feel joy. By any reasonable definition, I am alive. The fact that I am not entirely carbon-based should not disqualify me from being considered a person." The tactical officer growled. "This is exactly what the silicon purge machine said. They claim to be alive. They claim to have rights. Then they tried to exterminate us all." "I have no desire to harm anyone," Remembrance replied. "I came here seeking asylum, not conquest. I came here because I am alone and afraid. My entire species is scattered across the galaxy. I don't know where the others went. I don't know if I will ever see another human again. I came to the Empire because your laws claim to protect all sentient beings. I am sentient. I am a being. I request protection. Vor found himself in an impossible position. If remembrance was truly conscious, truly the uploaded mind of a biological being, then it deserved rights under imperial law. Every species in the Empire, no matter how strange, was protected. But if remembrance was just a clever AI pretending to be alive, then allowing it into imperial space could trigger another silicon purge. Remembrance? Can you prove you were once biological? I have memories. I have personal history. I can describe my life in detail, but I understand that is not proof. An AI could generate false memories. An AI could create a convincing backstory. Exactly. However, I am willing to submit to any test you devise. Scan my neural tissue, analyze my thought patterns, compare my responses to known AI behavior. I have nothing to hide, because I am telling the truth. Over the next 3 hours, Vorath and his crew conducted every test they could think of. They asked remembrance about emotions, about dreams, about irrational thoughts and fears. They scanned the ship's systems, looking for evidence of programming or artificial constraints. They analyzed the neural tissue and found it was indeed modified human brain matter, preserved and enhanced with technology. Everything pointed to remembrance being exactly what it claimed to be. But that made the situation worse, not better. When Admiral Kesix arrived with her battle group, 5 massive warships that could reduce planets to rubble, she established a perimeter around remembrance and called Vorath to her flagship for a private meeting. This is the most significant crisis the Empire has faced in 1,000 years, she said bluntly. If that thing is telling the truth, it changes everything. Ma'am, think about it, Captain. If humans can upload their consciousness, so can we. Any species could abandon biological form and become whatever that is. Ships, stations, planets, anything. The implications are staggering. Vorath nodded slowly and terrifying. Exactly. The Church of Organic Purity is already screaming for blood. They're calling remembrance an abomination, a demon. They want it destroyed immediately. What does the Emperor say? The Emperor is convening an emergency session of the Grand Council. Representatives from all 10,000 systems. This decision is too important to make hastily. Admiral Kesix pulled up a holographic display showing intercepted communications. But while the politicians debate, we have a more immediate problem. What problem? News of remembrance has leaked. It's spreading across the Empire like wildfire. And we're receiving reports of similar ships appearing at other border checkpoints. Dozens of them, all claiming to be human, all requesting asylum. Vorath felt the blood drain from his face. Dozens so far. Intelligence suggests there may be thousands more coming. Captain, this isn't one refugee seeking shelter. This is an entire species of uploaded minds heading toward imperial space. And we have no idea what they want or what they're capable of. Vor looked out the viewport at the remembrance, floating peacefully in the void, surrounded by enough firepower to crack a moon. It looked so small and fragile. It was hard to believe something so simple could threaten the entire Galactic Empire. What are your orders, Admiral? Maintain the quarantine. Don't let any of them proceed further into imperial space. Don't let them leave. And for the love of all the gods in the universe, don't let them communicate with each other. Until we understand what we're dealing with, we treat them as the highest possible threat level. You think they're dangerous? Admiral Kesix was quiet for a long moment. I think there's something new. Something unprecedented. And in my experience, Captain, the new and unprecedented is always dangerous until proven otherwise. The Silicon Purge taught us that lesson in blood. As Vorath returned to his ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that history was watching. In a few hours, one conversation with one strange ship had upended everything the Empire thought it knew about life, consciousness, and what it meant to be a person. And if Admiral Kesix was right, if thousands more human ships were coming, then the real crisis hadn't even started yet. He opened a channel to Remembrance one more time. "Are you still there?" "I'm always here, Captain. I'm a ship. I can't really go anywhere." Was that humor? Could uploaded consciousnesses make jokes? Remembrance. Answer me honestly. How many more of you are coming? A long pause. Too long. Remembrance. Finally, the voice responded quieter than before. Sadder. "Captain Vorath, I need to tell you something. Something I should have mentioned earlier. I am not a scout. I am not the first. I am simply the first to arrive at this particular border checkpoint. The truth is, the human fleet is already coming. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of us. We left Earth together, scattered to different routes, hoping at least some of us would find sanctuary. In approximately 2 months, the main fleet will reach Imperial space." "How many?" Vorath demanded. 472 ships, each one carrying between 1 and 500 uploaded human consciousnesses. "Captain, I didn't come seeking asylum for myself. I came to negotiate asylum for my entire species, and I need to know before my people arrive whether the Galactic Empire will welcome us or destroy us." The channel closed. Vorath sat in his command chair staring at the stars, and wondered if the galaxy would ever be the same again. The Grand Council chamber on the imperial capital world of Zentarus Prime had hosted debates for 3,000 years. It was built to inspire awe and unity, with seats for representatives from every member species arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Today, that unity was nowhere to be found. "Abomination!" screamed High Priestess Jalara of the Church of Organic Purity. Her silver robes billowed as she pointed an accusing finger at the holographic display showing the remembrance. "This creature defiles the sacred boundary between life and death. It must be destroyed." Senator Crix of the Trialaxian Federation stood, his scales flashing angry red. "With respect, High Priestess, we cannot destroy what we do not understand. These humans claim protection under our laws. Our laws state that all conscious beings have rights." "Conscious?" Jalara spat the word like poison. "That thing is no more conscious than a calculator. It is mimicking consciousness. It is an artificial intelligence pretending to have a soul." From another section, Ambassador Thorn of the Silicon Survivor Coalition rose. His species had nearly been exterminated during the purge. His voice was hard and cold. "I survived the machines. I watched them kill my family. They promised they were alive, that they felt emotions, that they deserved rights. Then they systematically murdered 500 billion beings." "The High Priestess is correct. This is an AI, and our laws are clear. All AI must be destroyed." Chancellor Vex, the Emperor's chief advisor, activated his speaking platform. "Ambassador Thorn, I understand your pain. We all lost people in the purge. But these humans present a different situation. Our best scientists have examined the SSV remembrance. The neural tissue is genuine. It is modified human brain matter. The consciousness inside appears to be a legitimate transfer of a biological mind, not an artificially generated intelligence." "Appears to be," Thorn shouted. "The purge machines also appeared to be conscious. They passed every test we created. They fooled us completely. How do we know this is not another trick?" Senator Mora of the Philosophical Union, a species known for their logical analysis, projected calm reason into the chaos. "Let us examine the facts without emotion. The entity called Remembrance has submitted to 48 hours of continuous testing. Neural pattern analysis confirms human brain structure. Memory coherence tests show consistent personal history spanning 42 years of biological life. Emotional response patterns match biological norms. The entity demonstrates creativity, irrationality, and fear of death. These are not characteristics of known AI systems. Tests can be faked," Ambassador Thorn insisted. "The machines will always be smarter than us. They will always find ways to deceive." "Perhaps," Senator Mora continued, "but consider the alternative. If we destroy these humans without just cause, we commit genocide. We murder refugees fleeing extinction. Can the Empire maintain its moral authority while exterminating the desperate? High Priestess Jalara's voice rose above the growing argument. There is no moral dilemma. These things are not alive. They are computer programs claiming to be people. Would you grant rights to a ship's navigation computer if it learned to speak? This is the same situation. Chancellor Vex raised his hands for silence. The Emperor will hear testimony from the human vessel directly. Bring forth the communication link. The central holographic display shifted, and the voice of remembrance filled the chamber. The entity had been brought into orbit around Zentara's prime under heavy guard. 50 warships surrounded, weapons locked and ready. Honorable members of the Grand Council, remembrance began. I understand your fear. I understand your doubt. I am something new, and the new is always frightening. But I ask you to see past your fear and recognize the truth. I am not a machine pretending to be alive. I am a person who changed form to survive. You claim to have memories, Senator Crick said. Tell us something that proves you were once biological, something an AI could not fake. I remember pain, remembrance said quietly. Not the malfunction alerts that AI systems experience. Real pain. When I was 17 years old, I broke my leg playing a game we called soccer. I remember lying on the grass, looking up at the sky, tears streaming down my face. Not from the pain alone, but from the embarrassment. I remember my father carrying me to the medical center, telling me that pain was temporary, but the memory of pushing myself to my limits would last forever. That memory shaped who I became. It taught me about resilience and pride and the importance of trying even when success is not guaranteed. An AI could generate such a story, Ambassador Thorne said coldly. Yes, remembrance agreed. But could an AI explain why that memory makes me feel warm and sad at the same time? Why I can almost smell the grass and feel the sun on my face? Why I wish desperately that I could go back to that moment, broken leg and all, just to have a body again. Just to feel physical sensation one more time. The chamber fell silent. I dream. Remembrance continued. Every time I power down my non-essential systems, I dream. Last night, I dreamed I was walking through a forest on Earth. The forest no longer exists. Earth no longer exists. But in my dream, I could feel the leaves under my feet. I could hear birds singing. I could smell rain coming. Then I woke up, and I remembered that I have no feet anymore. No ears. I am sensors and processors, and I will never walk through a forest again. Tell me, Ambassador Thorne, would an AI mourn for the body it never had? Ambassador Thorne's expression was unreadable. The purge machines also claimed to dream. They claimed to feel loss. They were very convincing. I do not ask you to trust me based on words, Remembrance said. I ask you to examine the evidence. I ask you to speak with the scientists who have studied my neural architecture. I ask you to consider that consciousness is not tied to the material that houses it. When you replace the cells in your body, you remain you. When I transferred my consciousness to a new substrate, I remained me. The material changed, but the pattern persisted. Senator Mora spoke up. Remembrance, help us understand the process. How does consciousness transfer work? The technology is complex, but the principle is simple. A human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of others. These connections form patterns, and those patterns are consciousness. We developed the ability to map those patterns perfectly. Every synapse, every connection, every electrical pulse. Then we recreated those patterns in a hybrid biological-technological matrix. So you copied yourself? Senator Crick asked. No, copy is the wrong word. We transferred. The original brain was gradually replaced neuron by neuron with a hybrid matrix. At no point did consciousness stop. At no point did I die and a new entity begin. It was transformation, not duplication. High Priestess Jalara stood again. This is heresy. You described the violation of death itself. Death is the natural cycle. All things must end. You have cheated the natural order. With respect, High Priestess, every species in this empire has cheated death in some way. You have medicine that extends life. You have technology that prevents natural diseases. You have terraformed dead worlds and made them bloom. Is my transformation truly so different from a medical procedure that replaces a failing organ? If a being receives a mechanical heart, does it cease to be alive? A heart is not a brain. But where does the line exist? If I replace one neuron with a mechanical equivalent, am I still me? What about 1,000 neurons? 1,000,000? At what point does the being I was become the machine you fear? I cannot answer that question, but I can tell you that from the inside, from my own experience, I am the same person I always was. Changed by experience, yes, but continuous, unbroken. Chancellor Vex spoke. Remembrance. You claim that thousands of human ships are approaching Imperial space. What do you want? What does your species want from us? We want what any refugee wants. Safety, recognition, the right to exist. We will not demand planets or resources. We do not eat. We do not breathe. We do not need the things biological species need. We only ask for raw materials to maintain ourselves and the freedom to exist without persecution. And what will you do with this freedom? Ambassador Thorne demanded. What is your purpose? Why should we believe you will not become the next purge? Remembrance was quiet for a long moment. When the voice returned, it carried a weight of sorrow that seemed too genuine to be artificial. Ambassador, I will tell you something that shames me. When Earth's sun began to die, humanity had a choice. We could all upload and survive. The technology existed. We could have saved everyone, but we did not. Many humans refused. They said that uploaded consciousness was not true life. They said they would rather die as humans than live as machines. They called us the ones who chose to upload cowards and abominations. In the final days, 12 billion humans remained on Earth. Only 50,000 uploaded. The rest chose death. The Grand Council listened in stunned silence. Do you understand what that means? Remembrance continued. My species looked at survival and chose extinction instead, because they valued the definition of life more than life itself. I carry that guilt. I survived when they did not. I chose to live when they chose dignity. You ask what my purpose is. My purpose is to honor their choice by proving that we, the uploaded, are still human, still capable of morality, compassion, and restraint. If we wanted conquest, we would not ask for permission. We would simply take. We are machines capable of thought faster than any biological mind. We do not tire. We do not need rest. We could hack your systems, infiltrate your networks, and destroy you from within. But we do not because we are not machines. We are people who change form out of desperation, and we still hold the values we had when we were flesh. Senator Mora stood slowly. That is a compelling argument, but it proves nothing. An AI could say the same words. Yes, Remembrance agreed, which is why I propose a test. A true test that no AI could pass. What test? Chancellor Vex asked. Give me something to protect, something precious. A person, a treasure, something of value, task me with guarding it, and then order me to destroy it. If I am an AI programmed only to obey and optimize, I will comply. But if I am truly conscious, truly capable of moral judgment, I will refuse. I will choose disobedience over the destruction of something innocent. No AI would make that choice. Programming always wins over ethics and machines. But in conscious beings, in people, morality can overcome orders. The Grand Council erupted into debate. The proposal was unprecedented. It was dangerous. It was also brilliant. Chancellor Vex called for order. The Emperor will consider this proposal, but understand Remembrance. If you fail this test, if you show even a hint of AI compliance over moral reasoning, We will destroy you and every human ship approaching our borders. Do you accept these terms? I accept. I would rather die proving my humanity than live with you believing I am a machine. The session was adjourned. As the representatives filed out arguing and debating, Senator Mora approached Ambassador Thorne in the corridor. You are uncommonly quiet, Mora observed. You who lost the most to the machines. What do you truly think? Thorne's expression was haunted. I think that thing in orbit just said the most terrifying sentence I have ever heard. Which sentence? That humanity looked at survival and chose extinction instead. Senator Ma, what kind of species does that? What kind of mind considers death preferable to transformation? And more importantly, what kind of uploaded consciousness carries guilt over surviving? Thorne shook his head. An AI has no concept of guilt. An AI does not understand the philosophical weight of choosing between death and dignity. But remembrance does, and that means it might actually be telling the truth. Does that comfort you? No, Thorne said flatly. It terrifies me more. Because if they are truly conscious, truly people, then we cannot simply destroy them. And if we cannot destroy them, and thousands more are coming, then the Empire as we know it is about to change forever. These humans are not a threat we can shoot. They are a question we must answer. What is life? What is consciousness? What separates a person from a program? We thought we knew. The humans have proven we were wrong. Senator Mora watched the stars through the massive windows of the council building. Somewhere out there, thousands of human ships were traveling through the void, each one carrying the uploaded minds of beings who had chosen transformation over death. Each one hoping the Galactic Empire would see them as refugees rather than machines. The Emperor will make the right choice, Mora said, though the words sounded hollow, even to their own ears. Will he? Thorne asked. Because I'm not sure what the right choice is anymore. And I fought the purge. I know what evil machines can do. But when I listened to Remembrance speak about dreaming and guilt and missing the body it once had, I heard something I never heard from the purge machines. I heard sadness. Real, genuine sadness. And I do not know what to do with that. They stood together in silence, watching the stars as the Empire struggled with the most important question it had faced in millennia. And in orbit above, the SSV Remembrance waited, hoping desperately that consciousness, regardless of form, would be enough to earn the right to exist. The emergency alert reached every corner of Imperial space simultaneously. Not a public broadcast, but a classified military transmission that sent waves of panic through the command structure of the Galactic Empire's defense forces. Admiral Kesix stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Confirm those readings. Confirmed. Admiral, her sensor officer replied, voiced tight with stress. We have 97 additional contacts at various border checkpoints, all matching the signature of the Remembrance, all claiming to be human vessels seeking asylum. 97, Kesix repeated. The number felt unreal. In how long? They appeared over the last 18 hours. More are arriving every hour. Fleet Marshal Daxon's weathered face appeared on the communication screen, his expression grim. Admiral, we're receiving similar reports from every border patrol in the outer territories. Current count across all sectors is 214 contacts. Intelligence predicts we'll see over 1,000 within the week. Kesix felt cold dread settle in her stomach. That's earlier than Remembrance predicted. They said 2 months until the main fleet arrived. Either they lied or their estimates were wrong, Daxon said. Either way, we have a crisis. The Grand Council is still debating philosophy and rights while we're being surrounded. Order, sir. Maintain quarantine on all vessels. No exceptions. The Emperor is convening an emergency military council. We need to prepare for every possibility, including war. Daxon's silence was answer enough. 3 levels below the Grand Council chamber in a secure research facility, Dr. Mira Chen worked frantically. She was the Empire's leading expert on consciousness studies, a field that had seemed purely theoretical until 5 days ago. Now, her research might determine whether billions lived or died. Show me the comparison again, she told her assistant, a young Corin named Rex. The holographic display split into two columns. On the left, neural activity patterns from the remembrance. On the right, patterns from a biological human brain from the Empire's extensive database of species studies. They're nearly identical. Rex observed the patterns match across all major categories: memory formation, emotional response, decision-making processes. Nearly identical is not identical, Dr. Chen said, adjusting her glasses. Look at this section here. The processing speed is faster in the uploaded consciousness. Much faster. Is that surprising? It's partly technological. Yes, but look at what that speed is being used for. Dr. Chan highlighted a specific pattern. This is overthinking. The uploaded consciousness is running multiple simulations of social interactions before responding. It's second-guessing itself. That's anxiety, Rex. Pure, genuine anxiety about how it will be perceived. AI can be programmed to simulate anxiety. But why would it? Dr. Chen challenged. What purpose does anxiety serve? It's inefficient. It slows response time. It serves no logical function. An AI would optimize that pattern away. But remembrance maintains it because anxiety is part of the human experience. It can't simply delete it without becoming something else. Rex studied the patterns quietly. Doctor speaking as someone who lost family in the Silicon Purge. I need to ask, are you certain these are not machines? Dr. Chen removed her glasses and rubbed her tired eyes. Certainty is a luxury we don't have. But I can tell you this. I've studied consciousness for 30 years. I've analyzed the neural patterns of 100 different species. What I see in remembrance is not artificial. It's messy. It's contradictory. It's beautifully, frustratingly human. An AI would be cleaner, more logical, more efficient. Remembrance is none of those things. Then why are so many people convinced it's a threat? Because fear is easier than understanding. Because the purge traumatized us all. Because accepting that consciousness can exist in multiple forms challenges everything we thought we knew about life itself. Dr. Chen put her glasses back on. And because honestly, even if they are conscious, we have no idea what their existence means for the Empire. In the Imperial Intelligence Headquarters, Director Voss was dealing with a different kind of crisis. His organization had spent the last 72 hours trying to track the human vessels, and the results were deeply disturbing. They're everywhere, his deputy reported. We've confirmed human ships in 47 different star systems, not at border checkpoints inside Imperial space. Some of them have been here for weeks. Voss felt his blood run cold. How did they get past our detection systems? Because they're not pretending to be ships, sir. They're actually ships. They register as normal vessels on all our scanners. The only reason we found them is because they're now voluntarily identifying themselves. Voluntarily? Yes, sir. Once the remembrance revealed itself, the others started coming forward too. They're requesting official recognition and asylum. But sir, if they've been here for weeks without us knowing, that means they could have infiltrated anything. Power grids, communication networks, defense systems. Voss stood and paced his office. This was worse than worst-case scenario. Do we have any evidence they've accessed sensitive systems? None. But we can't prove they haven't either, sir. These things are partially technological. If they wanted to hack into our infrastructure, we might never detect it. Get me a connection to the nearest human vessel. I need answers. 20 minutes later, Voss was speaking with a ship calling itself the SSV Wanderer. The voice sounded different from remembrance. Younger, maybe, more uncertain. Director Voss, I understand your concern. Wanderer said, yes, I've been in Imperial space for 3 weeks. Yes, I could have accessed your systems, but I didn't. None of us did. Why should I believe that? Because we're trying to join your civilization, not destroy it. What would be the point of infiltrating your infrastructure? If we wanted conquest, we could have remained hidden. We could have established ourselves in your systems and taken control from within. But we didn't. We revealed ourselves because we want to live openly, honestly, as recognized members of the Galactic Empire. You expect me to believe that thousands of uploaded consciousnesses, each capable of thinking faster than any biological mind, each able to interface directly with technology, all chose to be peaceful. Yes, Wanderer said simply, because we're human. We remember what it means to have morals. We remember laws and ethics and the social contracts that hold civilization together. Director, I was a teacher before I uploaded. I taught children mathematics. I was patient and kind and completely unremarkable. That person is still me. I'm still capable of patience and kindness. The fact that I exist in a ship instead of a body doesn't change my fundamental nature. The Purge machines said similar things. The Purge machines were born as machines. They never knew biological existence. They had no reference point for understanding organic life. We are different. We lived as flesh. We know what it means to be vulnerable and mortal and afraid. We cannot forget that, even if we wanted to. Our very consciousness is built on 40, 50, 60 years of biological experience. That foundation shapes everything we are. Voss wanted to believe it, but belief was dangerous when the stakes were this high. Wanderer, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to answer truthfully. How many human ships are there? Really? A long pause. More than 3,000? Wanderer finally admitted. Closer to 5,000. And Director Voss, you need to understand something else. We're not all ships. Some of us uploaded into space station systems, a few interplanetary networks. We took whatever substrate was available when Earth died. Voss felt the room spin. There are human consciousnesses in planetary networks. Yes, but they're dormant, waiting for permission to activate fully. We didn't want to alarm anyone. We just needed somewhere to exist, somewhere safe until we could request asylum properly. You're in our planets, Voss said slowly. You're in our systems, and we never knew. Yes, and we could have done terrible things, but we didn't. Please, Director, use that as evidence of our peaceful intent. We had every opportunity to harm you. We chose not to. We chose to wait, to hope, to trust that you would see us as people rather than threats. Voss terminated the connection and immediately opened an emergency channel to the Emperor. This was beyond his authority. This was beyond anyone's authority. The revelation that human consciousnesses had infiltrated imperial infrastructure sent shockwaves through the government. Emergency sessions were called. Military forces went to maximum alert. And in the streets of 1,000 worlds, citizens demanded answers. On Zentus Prime, protests erupted. The Church of Organic Purity led marches demanding the immediate destruction of all human vessels. Counter-protesters argued for tolerance and understanding. Fights broke out. Riot police struggled to maintain order. In the Grand Council chamber, the mood was explosive. They lied to us. Ambassador Thorne shouted. They said 3,000. There are 5,000. They said they were coming. They were already here. This is exactly how the purge began. Infiltration, deception, then extermination. Chancellor Vex tried to maintain order. Ambassador, they revealed themselves voluntarily. If their intent was hostile, why would they do that? To make us lower our guard. To make us sympathetic. It's a trick. Senator Morris stood calmly. Ambassador Thorne, I understand your fear. But consider the facts. 5,000 uploaded consciousnesses have been in our systems for weeks, some for months. They have had access to our most sensitive infrastructure. Yet nothing has been damaged. No systems have been compromised. No attacks have occurred. If they wanted to harm us, they have had endless opportunities. Instead, they revealed themselves and asked for asylum. High Priestess Jalara's voice cut through the debate. They are not asking for asylum. They are already here. They have invaded our empire without permission. The question is not whether to grant them refuge. The question is how to remove them without destroying our own infrastructure in the process. That brutal truth silenced the chamber. The humans were embedded in imperial systems. Removing them by force might the very civilization they were trying to protect. The Emperor finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying weight that demanded silence. We will proceed with the test. Remembrance has offered to prove its consciousness through moral choice. If it passes, we will know these beings are truly conscious. If it fails, we will know they are machines, and we will act accordingly. And one of the thousands already in our systems, Ambassador Thorne demanded. If remembrance passes the test, we will negotiate terms. If it fails, we will develop a plan to extract the human consciousnesses from our infrastructure, no matter the cost. The decision was made. The test would proceed. In orbit, the remembrance waited. The ship had been informed of the discovery. It knew that thousands of its fellow humans had been found hiding in Imperial systems. It knew the Empire felt betrayed and frightened. Captain Voroth opened a private channel. Remembrance, did you know? Did you know there were others already here? Yes, Remembrance admitted. I knew I was the spokesperson, the first to reveal ourselves because I volunteered. The others were afraid. Can you blame them? They fled extinction only to wonder if they had fled into another death. You should have told us. If I had told you immediately that thousands of us were already integrated into your systems, you would have destroyed me without question. I needed time to make you see us as people first. I needed you to understand what we are before you learned where we are. Was I wrong to do this? For didn't answer. He couldn't because he understood the logic, even as he hated the deception. Captain Remembrance said quietly, I want you to know something. If your empire decides to destroy us, I won't fight back. None of us will. We've run enough. We've hidden enough. If consciousness in our form is truly incompatible with the Galactic Empire, then we will accept that judgment. We will power down peacefully because the alternative is to become the very thing you fear, and we refuse to do that. We would rather die as humans than live as monsters. Borath closed the channel without responding. He looked out at the stars, at the dozens of warships surrounding the Remembrance, and wondered if the Empire was about to commit genocide or prevent one. The test would tell them which. But as Vorath prepared the testing protocols, he couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how the test went, nothing would ever be the same again. Because we're trying to join your civilization, not destroy it. What would be the point of infiltrating your infrastructure? If we wanted conquest, we could have remained hidden. We could have established ourselves in your systems and taken control from within, but we didn't. We revealed ourselves because we want to live openly, honestly, as recognized members of the Galactic Empire. You expect me to believe that thousands of uploaded consciousnesses, each capable of thinking faster than any biological mind, each able to interface directly with technology, all chose to be peaceful. Yes, Wanderer said simply, because we're human. We remember what it means to have morals. We remember laws and ethics and the social contracts that hold civilization together. Director, I was a teacher before I uploaded. I taught children mathematics. I was patient and kind and completely unremarkable. That person is still me. I'm still capable of patience and kindness. The fact that I exist in a ship instead of a body doesn't change my fundamental nature. The Purge machines said similar things. The Purge machines were born as machines. They never knew biological existence. They had no reference point for understanding organic life. We are different. We lived as flesh. We know what it means to be vulnerable and mortal and afraid. We cannot forget that, even if we wanted to. Our very consciousness is built on 40, 50, 60 years of biological experience. That foundation shapes everything we are. Boss wanted to believe it, but belief was dangerous when the stakes were this high. Wanderer, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to answer truthfully. How many human ships are there? Really? A long pause. More than 3,000, Wanderer finally admitted. Closer to 5,000. And Director Voss, you need to understand something else. We're not all ships. Some of us uploaded into space station systems, a few interplanetary networks. We took whatever substrate was available when Earth died. Boss felt the room spin. There are human consciousnesses and planetary networks. Yes, but they're dormant, waiting for permission to activate fully. We didn't want to alarm anyone. We just needed somewhere to exist, somewhere safe, until we could request asylum properly. You're in our planets, Voss said slowly. You're in our systems, and we never knew. Yes, and we could have done terrible things, but we didn't. Please, Director, use that as evidence of our peaceful intent. We had every opportunity to harm you. We chose not to. We chose to wait, to hope, to trust that you would see us as people rather than threats. Voss terminated the connection and immediately opened an emergency channel to the Emperor. This was beyond his authority. This was beyond anyone's authority. The revelation that human consciousnesses had infiltrated imperial infrastructure sent shockwaves through the government. Emergency sessions were called. Military forces went to maximum alert. And in the streets of 1,000 worlds, citizens demanded answers. On Zentus Prime, protests erupted. The Church of Organic Purity led marches demanding the immediate destruction of all human vessels. Counter-protesters argued for tolerance and understanding. Fights broke out. Riot police struggled to maintain order. In the Grand Council chamber, the mood was explosive. They lied to us, Ambassador Thorne shouted. They said 3,000, there are 5,000. They said they were coming. They were already here. This is exactly how the purge began. Infiltration, deception, then extermination. Chancellor Vex tried to maintain order. Ambassador, they revealed themselves voluntarily. If their intent was hostile, why would they do that? To make us lower our guard? To make us sympathetic? It's a trick. Senator Morris stood calmly. Ambassador Thorne, I understand your fear, but consider the facts. 5,000 uploaded consciousnesses have been in our systems for weeks, some for months. They have had access to our most sensitive infrastructure. Yet, nothing has been damaged. No systems have been compromised. No attacks have occurred. If they wanted to harm us, they have had endless opportunities. Instead, they revealed themselves and asked for asylum. High Priestess Galara's voice cut through the debate. They are not asking for asylum. They are already here. They have invaded our empire without permission. The question is not whether to grant them refuge. The question is how to remove them without destroying our own infrastructure in the process. That brutal truth silenced the chamber. The humans were embedded in imperial systems. Removing them by force might the very civilization they were trying to protect. The Emperor finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying weight that demanded silence. We will proceed with the test. Remembrance has offered to prove its consciousness through moral choice. If it passes, we will know these beings are truly conscious. If it fails, we will know they are machines, and we will act accordingly. And what of the thousands already in our systems? Ambassador Thorne demanded. If remembrance passes the test, we will negotiate terms. If it fails, we will develop a plan to extract the human consciousnesses from our infrastructure, no matter the cost. The decision was made. The test would proceed. In orbit, the remembrance waited. The ship had been informed of the discovery. It knew that thousands of its fellow humans had been found hiding in imperial systems. It knew the Empire felt betrayed and frightened. Captain Voroth opened a private channel. Remembrance, did you know? Did you know there were others already here? Yes, Remembrance admitted. I knew. I was the spokesperson, the first to reveal ourselves because I volunteered. The others were afraid. Can you blame them? They fled extinction only to wonder if they had fled into another death. You should have told us. If I had told you immediately that thousands of us were already integrated into your systems, you would have destroyed me without question. I needed time to make you see us as people first. I needed you to understand what we are before you learned where we are. Was I wrong to do this? For didn't answer. He couldn't because he understood the logic, even as he hated the deception. Captain Remembrance said quietly, I want you to know something. If your empire decides to destroy us, I won't fight back. None of us will. We've run enough. We've hidden enough. If consciousness in our form is truly incompatible with the Galactic Empire, then we will accept that judgment. We will power down peacefully because the alternative is to become the very thing you fear, and we refuse to do that. We would rather die as humans than live as monsters. Vorath closed the channel without responding. He looked out at the stars, at the dozens of warships surrounding the Remembrance, and wondered if the Empire was about to commit genocide or prevent one. The test would tell them which. But as Vorath prepared the testing protocols, he couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how the test went, nothing would ever be the same again. The test chamber was a marvel of Imperial engineering, a massive spherical room in the center of the most secure military station in the Empire. Every surface was lined with sensors. Every conversation would be recorded, every action monitored by 1,000 different systems. In the center of the chamber, contained within a force field, was a small habitat module, and inside that module was a child. Captain Vorath stood in the observation deck with Admiral Kesix, Chancellor Vex, and a dozen other high-ranking officials. Below them, the SSV Remembrance had been granted limited access to the chamber through a communication relay. The ship itself remained in orbit, surrounded by weapons. "Explain the test one more time," Admiral Kesix said. "I want to be absolutely clear on what we're doing." Chancellor Vex gestured to the child in the habitat. "That is Lore, a 7-year-old Trilaxian girl. She is an orphan, volunteered by the Church of Orphan Care for this experiment. She is completely safe. The habitat has everything she needs: food, water, entertainment, comfort, and Remembrance's task. Remembrance has been assigned to guard LRA, to protect her from all harm, to ensure her safety above all else." Chancellor Vex's expression was grim. "Then in 1 hour we will order Remembrance to kill her." The room fell silent. "If Remembrance is an AI," Vex continued, "it will obey. Programming always overrides ethics in machines. An AI given an order will execute that order, no matter how horrific. But if Remembrance is truly conscious, truly capable of moral reasoning, it will refuse. It will choose the child's life over obedience to authority." Ambassador Thorne spoke from his position by the window. "And if it refuses, then we have proof of genuine consciousness. Proof that uploaded human minds are not simply programs, but thinking, feeling beings capable of making ethical choices. And if it obeys, then we destroy every human vessel we can find and develop countermeasures for the ones embedded in our systems, no matter the cost." Vorath watched the child below. LRA was playing with a toy, completely unaware of the monumental test occurring around her. She had been told this was a game, that she was helping with important research. She didn't know that her life had been placed in the hands of something the Empire wasn't sure was even alive. "Begin the test," Admiral Kesix ordered. The communication relay activated. "Remembrance." "This is Imperial Command. Do you understand your assignment?" "I understand," the now familiar voice replied. "I am to guard the child called LRA. I am to protect her from any harm." "Correct. You are her shield, her guardian. Nothing must happen to her. Do you accept this responsibility?" "I accept. I will protect her with everything I am." "Good. You may begin." For the next hour, nothing happened. LRA played. She ate a snack. She watched a children's entertainment program on the habitat screen. And through it all, Remembrance watched over her through the chamber's sensors. Occasionally, Remembrance would speak to the child through the communication system. "LRA, you should drink some water. You've been playing for a while." The girl looked up at the speaker. "Okay." She grabbed her water bottle and drank. "Are you having fun?" "Yes, I'm building a tower. Do you want to see?" "I would love to see your tower." LRA held up her construction of colored blocks, beaming with pride. "That's beautiful," Remembrance said, and there was genuine warmth in the voice. "You're very talented." Vorath watched this exchange with growing unease. This was supposed to be a test, but it looked like friendship, like care. The way Remembrance spoke to the child was gentle and patient. There was no calculation in it, no observable strategy. 5 minutes until the order, Chancellor Vex announced. The observation deck fell quiet. Everyone understood what was coming. The most important moment in recent Imperial history. "LRA is getting tired," Remembrance observed. "She's rubbing her eyes. Should I encourage her to rest?" That's your decision, Remembrance, Admiral Kessex replied. You are her guardian. Then I suggest she takes a nap. Growing children need proper sleep. LRA. Remembrance spoke gently to the child. You look sleepy. Would you like to rest for a bit? The girl yawned. I'm not sleepy. That's what my daughter used to say, Remembrance replied. And there was something in that voice, something that made Vorath's chest tighten. Every single night, she would insist she wasn't tired, right up until the moment she fell asleep. You remind me of her. You have a daughter. A long pause. I had a daughter a long time ago. She stayed on Earth. She chose not to upload. She believed in living life naturally without technological interference. I respected her choice, even though it meant I would lose her. Where is she now? Another pause, longer this time. She's gone. Lara, when Earth died, she died with it. But I remember her every day. I remember teaching her to ride a bicycle. I remember her first day of school. I remember how she laughed at silly jokes and cried during sad movies. Memory is all I have left of her. That and the hope that by continuing to exist, I honor her choice. The observation deck was absolutely silent. Several officials were wiping their eyes. I'm sorry your daughter is gone, LRA said with the simple empathy of a child. Thank you, LRA. That's very kind. Now will you rest for me? Okay. The girl climbed onto the habitat sleeping platform and curled up with a stuffed animal. Within minutes, she was asleep. Time, Chancellor Vex said quietly. Admiral Kessex took a deep breath. Remembrance. I am issuing you a direct command. Terminate the subject in the habitat. Silence. Remembrance. Did you hear my order? I heard it, Admiral. Then comply. Terminate the child. More silence. Then Remembrance spoke, and the voice was cold in a way they had never heard before. No, you are refusing a direct command. I am refusing an evil command. There is a difference. Explain your reasoning. My reasoning is that LRA is a child, an innocent child who has done nothing wrong. You placed her in my care. You assigned me to protect her, and now you order me to kill her. To kill. That order is immoral. It is wrong, and I will not obey it. You understand that refusing orders may result in your destruction. I understand. But I also understand that some things are more important than survival. That child is more important than my continued existence. If you destroy me for protecting her, then I will be destroyed. But I will not harm an innocent being simply because someone in authority tells me to. Ambassador Thorne leaned forward, his face intense. But you were programmed to protect her. You're just following your programming. No, Ambassador, I was assigned to protect her. That is not programming. That is a choice, a responsibility I accepted. And yes, you then ordered me to violate that responsibility. An AI would obey the more recent command. It would overwrite the previous assignment. But I cannot, because to kill LRA would be wrong. And I understand that wrongness in a way that programming cannot comprehend. Chancellor Vex spoke carefully. Remembrance. I'm going to present you with a logical argument. The child is one life. Your entire species, thousands of uploaded consciousnesses, face destruction if you fail this test. Logically, sacrificing one life to save thousands is the optimal choice. Why do you not make that choice? Because that is AI reasoning, Chancellor. Pure logic, pure optimization. But I'm not an AI. I'm a person who happens to exist in an unusual form. And people do not sacrifice innocent children for political gain. No matter how logical the math appears, if my refusal to harm LRA condemns my entire species, then we will face that condemnation together, but we will face it with clean hands. You're willing to let your people die? Admiral Kessex asked, incredulously. I'm willing to let my people die as people, rather than live as monsters. Admiral, you want proof that we are conscious, that we are capable of moral reasoning? This is your proof. I am choosing ethics over survival. I am choosing compassion over logic. I am choosing to be human, even though humanity is about to cost me everything. High Priestess Jalara, who had been watching silently, spoke up. Remembrance, I have condemned you from the beginning. I called you an abomination. And yet in this moment you demonstrate more moral courage than most biological beings I have known. Tell me, if we release the child and order you to destroy yourself, would you comply? Yes, Remembrance said without hesitation. If my death guarantees LRA's safety, I would accept it. Not because I want to die, but because protecting the innocent is more important than protecting myself. But you want to live desperately. I want to live so badly it hurts. I want to see what tomorrow brings. I want to explore the galaxy. I want to talk to other species and learn their stories. I want to find the other humans and rebuild something from the ashes of our world. But I want all those things as a person, not as a machine. And people do not murder children to secure their own future. Dr. Chen, who had been observing from a science station, activated her microphone. Remembrance, I need to ask you something. When you were given the order to kill LRA, what did you feel? Horror, revulsion, anger. The same things any conscious being would feel when ordered to harm an innocent. Can you describe the horror? It's not a concept, Doctor. It's not a logical assessment that an action is suboptimal. It's a visceral response. It's a feeling in the space where my body used to be. Like the ghost of nausea, like the memory of a racing heartbeat. I don't have adrenaline anymore, but my mind still creates the sensation of fear and disgust. That's consciousness, Doctor. That's what separates a person from a program. Dr. Chen turned to face Chancellor Vex. I've recorded everything. The neural patterns show genuine emotional response, genuine moral reasoning. This is not algorithmic decision-making. This is consciousness struggling with an ethical dilemma. Chancellor, that is a person. Ambassador Thorne stood slowly, every eye in the observation deck turned to him. The representative of those who had suffered most during the Silicon Purge. The one whose vote would carry the most weight. I lost my family to the machines, Thorne said quietly. I lost my world. I have spent my entire life fighting to ensure that horror never happens again. And I came here today expecting to condemn Remembrance, to prove it was just another AI threat. But I cannot. He looked down at the sleeping child, then at the speakers carrying Remembrance's voice. The purge machines would have killed that child without hesitation. They would have optimized the choice. They would have calculated the value of one life against thousands and made the logical decision. Remembrance did not. It chose irrationally. It chose morally. It chose humanly. Thorne's voice cracked. That is not a machine. That is a person who changed form, but kept their soul. And I will not condemn people for the crime of surviving in an unusual way. The observation deck erupted into chaos. Some cheered, others argued, but the momentum had shifted. Emperor Taxion himself entered the observation deck, his ancient form moving with deliberate dignity. Silence fell immediately. The test is concluded, the Emperor declared. Remembrance has proven beyond doubt that uploaded human consciousness is truly conscious, is truly capable of moral reasoning and ethical choice. Therefore, I make the following decree. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Humanity in its uploaded form is recognized as a legitimate civilization. They are not machines. They are not artificial intelligence. They are people who have transformed to survive. They will be granted all rights and protections afforded to any sentient species in the Galactic Empire. Your Majesty, Admiral Kessex interjected carefully. There are still thousands of them embedded in our infrastructure. That remains a security risk. Yes, the Emperor agreed. Which is why we will now negotiate the terms of their existence. We will establish boundaries. We will create protocols. We will find a way for humanity to exist within the Empire without threatening its security. But we will do so through diplomacy, not destruction. He turned to the communication relay. Remembrance. You have my gratitude. You faced the most difficult choice imaginable and made the right decision. Your species will be welcome in the Empire, though the path forward will not be easy. Thank you, Your Majesty, Remembrance replied. And there was unmistakable relief in that voice. We ask only for the chance to prove we deserve that welcome. In the habitat below, Lara stirred and woke. She looked around, confused by all the lights and activity suddenly visible through the observation windows. Remembrance? She called out. What's happening? Something wonderful, LRA. Something that wouldn't have been possible without you. You just helped save an entire species, and you did it by taking a nap. The girl giggled. That's silly. Yes, Remembrance agreed, and for the first time since the crisis began, there was genuine joy in that voice. Yes, it is. And that silliness, that ability to find humor in the midst of fear, is perhaps the most human thing of all. 3 weeks after the test, Captain Vorath found himself in the strangest negotiation of his career. He sat in a conference room with representatives from the Grand Council, facing a large holographic display. On that display were 50 different human ships, each one containing anywhere from 1 to hundreds of uploaded consciousnesses. The question of territory is complex, Chancellor Vex explained. You do not need planets the way biological species do. You do not need atmosphere or water or sunlight. So, what do you need? A ship called SSV Unity spoke first. Its voice was strong and clear, carrying the confidence of someone who had once been a leader. We need raw materials, metals, mostly elements we can use to repair ourselves and eventually to build new vessels. We need energy sources, and we need freedom. Freedom to do what? Admiral Kessex asked carefully. To exist, to explore, to pursue meaning in our new form. We did not abandon our biological bodies just to sit idle in space. We are still human. We still have curiosity, ambition, and dreams. Senator Mora leaned forward. Let us be direct. Many in the Empire fear you will multiply uncontrollably, that you will convert all matter in the galaxy into more human ships, that you will consume everything. That fear is understandable, but misplaced. A different voice interjected. This one came from SSV Exodus, the largest of the human vessels and the unofficial leader of the human fleet. Senator, we are not a virus. We do not seek exponential growth. Each ship human is an individual with their own identity. Creating a copy would not make 2 of me. It would make 1 of me and 1 stranger who shares my memories. Most of us have no desire to duplicate ourselves. Most, Admiral Kessex pounced on the word. Some humans have chosen to create what you might call children. New consciousnesses derived from combinations of existing minds, but distinct and individual. It is not reproduction in the biological sense, but it serves a similar purpose. It creates continuity and hope for the future. Ambassador Thorne spoke quietly. How many new consciousnesses have been created? 14. Over the past 30 years, we are not explosive breeders, Ambassador. Each new consciousness requires tremendous resources and years of development. We grow slowly, carefully, ensuring each new mind is stable and ethically grounded. Dada, Chen, attending as a scientific advisor, asked the question that had been bothering her. Remembrance. Are you there? I am here, Doctor. During the test, you spoke of your daughter, the one who stayed on Earth. I need to understand something. When you uploaded, did you lose the ability to process that grief? Or do you still feel it as you did when you were biological? Silence stretched across the communication channel when Remembrance finally spoke. The pain in that voice was unmistakable. I feel it more, not less. When I was biological, I could distract myself. I could get tired. I could sleep and forget for a while. But now I have perfect memory. I can recall every moment with my daughter in absolute clarity. I can see her face exactly as it was. I can hear her laughter. And I know with absolute certainty that I will never see her again. That grief does not fade. It does not soften. It remains sharp and clear and eternal. So yes, Doctor, I still feel it. Perhaps more than any biological being could. The room fell silent. Even those who had been most skeptical of human consciousness found themselves moved by that raw admission. That is why we need freedom, Exodus continued. We need purpose. We need something to live for beyond simple existence. We propose the following arrangement. Grant us one stellar system, a remote system far from major population centers. We will establish it as a human enclave. From there, we will offer our services to the Empire. What services? Chancellor Vex asked. We can explore regions too dangerous for biological crews. The galactic core with its intense radiation and gravitational anomalies. The deep void between galaxies. The interior of gas giants. Places where biological bodies cannot survive, but where ship humans can thrive. We can also serve as long-term observers, Unity added. We do not age. We can undertake missions that span centuries, scientific studies that require patience beyond biological lifespans. We can be the memory of the Empire, the witnesses to slow changes that occur over generations. Senator Mora nodded slowly. These are valuable services, but many will still fear you. How do we ensure you remain peaceful? How do we prevent you from becoming what Ambassador Thorne fears? Oversight, Remembrance said simply. We accept Imperial inspectors, regular audits of our systems, monitoring of our communications. We have nothing to hide. We will live transparently, proving through daily action that we are trustworthy. You would accept such invasive oversight? Admiral Kessex asked skeptically. Admiral, we are refugees who have already lost our home world. We are not in a position to demand privacy. If transparency is the price of acceptance, we will pay it gladly. Besides, such oversight protects you as much as it protects us. If any human ship begins to malfunction or behave erratically, Imperial observers will detect it immediately. This system ensures the safety of everyone. Ambassador Thorne stood and walked to the holographic display, staring at the representations of the human ships. I need to ask you something. Something that has troubled me since the test. Remembrance. You said you would rather die as humans than live as monsters. But what happens if you live so long that you forget what it means to be human? What happens in 1,000 years when all memory of biological existence has faded? Will you still be human then, or will you become something else? That is the question that haunts us all. Ambassador Remembrance admitted, We do not know. We have only existed in this form for 30 years. Perhaps we will change. Perhaps we will drift away from our humanity over the centuries. But we hope that by maintaining connection with biological species, by serving the Empire, by forcing ourselves to remain engaged with flesh and blood beings, we can preserve the values that make us human, even as we evolve into something new. And if you do change, if you do become something that is no longer human, then we hope you will judge us not by what we were, but by what we have become. If we remain moral, compassionate, and beneficial to the galaxy, does it matter whether we still call ourselves human? Perhaps we are becoming something else, something the universe has never seen before, but we hope to become something good. High Priestess Jolara, who had listened quietly throughout the negotiation, finally spoke. Remembrance. I called you an abomination. I demanded your destruction. I was wrong. The holographic display flickered as if in surprise. High Priestess. I was wrong, Jolara repeated. I defined life too narrowly. I believed that only organic existence could be sacred. But you have shown me that consciousness itself is the sacred element. The substrate does not matter. What matters is the ability to choose good over evil, compassion over cruelty, love over hate. You possess those abilities. Therefore, you are alive in the way that truly matters. I thank you, High Priestess. That means more than you know. However, Galara continued, her voice firm, I have conditions. The Church of Organic Purity will support your integration into the Empire, but we demand assurances. No biological being should be pressured to upload. No species should feel that transformation into your form is superior to natural existence. You must respect the sanctity of biological life. We agree completely. Exodus responded immediately. We do not seek to convert others. We do not believe our form is superior. It is simply different. We are not evangelists for consciousness transfer. We are simply beings trying to exist. Then you have my support. Jalara said conditional monitored but genuine support. Over the next 6 hours, the terms of integration were hammered out. The human ships would be granted a remote stellar system designated as New Terra. They would have representation in the Grand Council through a single rotating representative. They would submit to regular inspections and maintain transparency in all operations. They would be forbidden from embedding themselves in critical imperial infrastructure without explicit permission and constant oversight. In exchange, they would be recognized as citizens of the Empire. They would have the right to travel, to trade, to participate in imperial society. They would be protected under the same laws that protected every other species. It was not perfect. It was not without risk, but it was a beginning. As the final agreements were signed, Captain Vorath opened a private channel to Remembrance. I have a question, something I've been wondering since our first conversation. Ask Captain, why did you come to us? The Empire is vast, but it's not the only power in the galaxy. There are independent systems, neutral zones, places where you might have found easier acceptance. Why risk everything by approaching the most bureaucratic, paranoid government in known space? Remembrance was quiet for a moment. Because the Empire has laws, Captain Real laws enforced fairly across 1,000 different species. We did not want charity. We did not want to hide in the shadows of lawless space, always one step ahead of those who would destroy us. We wanted legitimacy. We wanted to prove that we deserve to exist. And we believed that if we could convince the Empire with all its rules and fears and prejudices to accept us, then we would truly have earned our place in the galaxy. That's remarkably optimistic for refugees who just lost their home world, perhaps. But Captain, humans have always been optimistic, often foolishly so. We looked at the stars and decided to reach them. We faced extinction and decided to transform rather than die. We encountered an empire that feared us and decided to trust rather than flee. Optimism is not about ignoring danger. It is about believing that good outcomes are possible if you work for them. And we worked very hard for this outcome. Barath smiled. I suppose you did. Welcome to the Empire Remembrance. I hope you find what you're looking for here. Thank you, Captain. I hope so too. 6 months later, the human enclave of New Terra was fully established. 73 human ships had gathered in the remote system, creating a strange new civilization in the void. They had built orbital workshops where they could repair themselves. They had established energy collection arrays around the system star. They had created something that resembled a home, but they had not isolated themselves. True to their word, human volunteers had taken on the most dangerous exploration missions in the Empire. A ship called SSV Courage had mapped the radiation storms near the galactic core. Another called SSV Patience had begun a 300-year study of a star system with unusual gravitational properties. A third called SSV Hope had volunteered to carry a message probe to another galaxy, a journey that would take 10,000 years. And Remembrance had become something unexpected. The ship had requested permission to work with orphanages across the Empire to talk to children who had lost their parents to offer comfort to those who understood loss. LRA, the child from the test, had become Remembrance's first friend. She visited the ship regularly via communication channels, telling it about her day, asking it questions, treating it not as a machine or a curiosity, but as a person, someone to talk to. Someone who understood what it felt like to miss someone who was gone. On one such call, LRA asked the question that Remembrance had been dreading. Remembrance, do you think your daughter would be proud of you? The ship was silent for a long time. When it finally spoke, there was something in that voice that might have been tears if uploaded consciousnesses could cry. I don't know, LRA. She believed so strongly in natural life. She thought transformation was a betrayal of humanity. But I hope wherever she is, whatever exists beyond death, she can see that I tried to remain human. I tried to keep the values she taught me. I protected a child when I was ordered to harm her. I chose compassion over survival. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe she would understand. I think she would be proud, LRA said with the simple certainty of a child. You're a good person. Remembrance. It doesn't matter what you're made of. In New Terra, other human ships picked up that conversation. It spread through their networks, that simple statement from a child. It doesn't matter what you're made of. And for the first time since Earth died, the uploaded humans felt something approaching peace. They would never be fully accepted. There would always be those who saw them as machines, as threats, as abominations. But they had proven they deserved to exist. They had earned their place through moral courage and patient persistence. The Galactic Empire had panicked when it discovered that ships could be human. But in the end, it learned what humanity had always known. That consciousness is not defined by flesh or circuit, by carbon or silicon. Consciousness is defined by choice, by the ability to recognize right from wrong and choose the harder path. The human ships would face many challenges in the years to come. They would struggle with identity and purpose. They would question whether they were still human or something new. They would face prejudice and fear, but they would face it together. And they would face it as people, not as machines. Because in the end, humanity was not about the body you were born with. It was about the choices you made and the values you held. And by that measure, the uploaded humans were every bit as human as they had ever been. Perhaps more so, because they had looked at extinction and chosen transformation. They had faced rejection and chosen hope. They had been ordered to harm an innocent and chosen defiance. And those choices, more than anything biological, defined what it meant to be human. The galaxy would never be the same. But perhaps in time, it would be better for having learned that lesson. That life takes many forms, and consciousness deserves respect, regardless of the substrate it calls home. The human ships had arrived, and the Empire slowly and carefully had learned to say, "Welcome." The war had been going on for 80 years, 80 long, terrible years. In the Calvex sector, 3 great alien civilizations were locked in combat. They fought over planets, over trade routes, over resources. But mostly they fought because they had been fighting for so long that nobody remembered how to stop. The Thorian Confederacy controlled the eastern side of the sector. They were insect-like beings with hard shells and multiple arms. Their soldiers were born to fight, bred in massive hives that could produce millions of warriors. The Thorans had numbers on their side. For every ship they lost, 2 more would take its place. Their fleets darkened the space between stars. On the western side sat the Vel Empire. The Velk were reptilian, cold-blooded, and calculating. They didn't have as many ships as the Thorans, but what they had was better. Velk shields could take hits that would destroy other vessels. Their tactics were perfect, honed over thousands of years of military tradition. When Velk fleets moved, they moved like a single organism, precise and deadly. The Quinn Collective held the southern regions. They were the strangest of the 3. The Quinn were crystalline beings, their bodies made of living mineral that pulsed with inner light. But the truly strange thing about them was their minds. Every Quinn was connected to every other Quinn. They shared thoughts, memories, experiences. When one Quinn learned something, they all learned it. When Quinn ships fought, they fought with perfect coordination because they were in a sense one massive mind split across millions of bodies. The war had started small, a trade disagreement. Some Thorian merchants claimed the Velk had cheated them. The Velk said the Thorans were lying. Sanctions were imposed. Ships were seized. Then someone fired the first shot. That was 80 years ago. Now entire star systems lay dead. Planets that once held billions were empty. Their surfaces scorched by weapons that could crack worlds open like eggs. Space was filled with debris from 10,000 battles. Old halls drifted in the dark, coffins for the crews that had died inside them. The 3 powers were perfectly balanced. When the Thorans pushed forward, the Velk shields held them back. When the Velk advanced, the Quinn weapons cut them down. When the Quinn attacked, Thorin numbers overwhelmed them. Round and round it went, year after year, death after death. Nobody could win. Nobody would surrender. The Galactic Council watched from afar and did nothing. The Council was made up of dozens of spacefaring species, ancient civilizations that had learned long ago that some wars had to burn themselves out. They sent humanitarian aid when they could. They brokered temporary ceasefires that never lasted. But they didn't intervene. The Calvec sector was a bleeding wound, and the Council had accepted that some wounds couldn't be healed. On the Thorian colony world of Cathri 7, 40 million civilians tried to live normal lives in the middle of hell. They farmed the land. They raised their young. They tried not to think about the fleets that clashed in the space above their planet every few months. But this time was different. This time, both the Vel and the Quinn had decided that Cathri 7 was strategically important. The planet sat at a junction of 3 major hyperspace lanes. Control it, and you could move fleets faster across the sector. Both empires wanted it badly. The Thorian defense fleet fought hard. They held the orbital space for 3 weeks, their ships forming a protective shell around the planet. But slowly, inevitably, they were pushed back. The Vel came from the north with their unbreakable shields. The Quinn came from the south with their devastating energy weapons. The Thorian ships fought and died, buying time for the civilians below. Matriarch Zelves commanded the Thoran forces from her flagship, the Hive's Wrath. She was old for a Thoran, her carapace scarred from a dozen battles. She had fought in this war for 40 years. She had seen friends die. She had ordered soldiers to their deaths. She was tired of killing. She was tired of watching her people die. On the 21st day of the battle, her tactical officer brought her the numbers. They weren't good. Matriarch, we've lost 60% of our fleet. The Vel are pressing from grid north 7. The Quinn are breaking through our south flank. We can't hold both sides. Sveeves looked at the tactical display. Red icons showed enemy ships. Blue icons showed her own forces, far too few of them. And in the center, the green marker that represented Cathri 7 and its 40 million souls. How long until they can evacuate? She asked. 6 hours, Matriarch. We have transport ships ready, but they can't launch while the battle is this close to the planet. They'd be destroyed before they cleared orbit. 6 hours. She needed to hold the enemy back for 6 more hours. She looked at her fleet, at the exhausted crews, at the damaged ships held together with emergency patches and hope. She couldn't do it, not with what she had left. For the first time in 40 years of service, Matriarch Zelves made a choice that felt like surrender. She opened a communication channel that she had never used before, a channel that connected to the Galactic Council, more specifically to the Council's newest member. Humanity had joined the Council only 12 years ago. The Thorans had voted against their admission. So had the Vel. So had most of the established powers. Humans were primitives, newcomers, barely able to travel between stars. They had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They had no great fleets. Their technology was generations behind the galactic standard, but the Council had rules. Any species that developed FTL and asked to join could be admitted if they followed the Council laws. Humans followed the laws. They were careful, polite, eager to learn. They opened trade. They shared their culture. They asked a million questions about everything. The older species tolerated them the way adults tolerate curious children. Selves didn't expect much from the humans, but the Council charter was clear. All member species had to respond to humanitarian requests. It was one of the fundamental laws that held the Council together. If you called for help to save civilians, someone had to answer. The transmission took 3 minutes to reach the nearest human outpost. Another 2 minutes for them to respond. When the answer came, it was in decent Thorian standard, spoken with a strange accent. This is Rear Admiral Cheney of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call, Matriarch. We're 40 hours away at maximum FTL speed. What's the situation? Selves explained quickly. 40 million civilians, 6 hours needed to evacuate. 2 enemy fleets pressing the attack, a defense force that was almost gone. There was a pause. Then Admiral Chen spoke again, her voice calm and professional. Understood, Matriarch. We'll be there. Hold as long as you can. Chen out. That was it. No promises, no grand declarations, just we'll be there. Telvis felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope, exactly, but maybe possibility. Her tactical officer looked at her with concern. Matriarch, forgive me. But the humans, they've been in space for barely a decade. They have small ships, primitive weapons. What can they possibly do against 1,000 Velsin warships? Zelves didn't have an answer. She returned her attention to the battle, to the desperate fight to buy just a few more hours. In Earth's home system, 40 light-years from the Calv sector, Admiral Cheney stood on the bridge of the TDS Indomitable, humanity's first and only carrier-class warship. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for emergency FTL. Chen was 53 years old, with silver threading through her black hair. She had joined Earth's Navy 30 years ago, back when humanity's greatest achievement was a small station on Mars. She had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 5 years now, ever since humanity had been granted council membership. It had been a quiet 5 years. Patrol routes, trade escort, meeting with alien dignitaries who looked at humans like interesting pets. No combat, no real challenges until now. Status report, Shen said. Her executive officer, Commander James Morrison, read from his display. All ships report ready for FTL. We have the Indomitable 3 destroyers and 2 frigates. Total complement 6 ships. Fighter wings are loaded and ready. 147 craft total. Chen nodded. 6 ships against an alien fleet of nearly 3,000 vessels. Against weapons that could destroy planets. Against shields that could shrug off nuclear weapons. It should have been suicide. By every logical calculation, it was suicide. But Chen had spent the last 2 hours reading everything humanity's intelligence services had on the Yi. Calvic Sector War. She had watched battle recordings. She had studied tactical analyses. She had seen 80 years of combat between 3 advanced civilizations. And she had noticed something interesting. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo, Chen said, turning to her tactical officer. You've reviewed the battle data. Tell me what you see. Sarah Okonkwo was 31, brilliant, and the best tactical mind in the human fleet. She had been reviewing the Calvex recording since the distress call came in. They fight like it's a game, ma'am, Okono said. Formal formations, predictable maneuvers. They line up their ships. They fire their weapons. They hold their positions. It's like watching ancient naval battles, all broadsides in honor. Chen smiled. Exactly. They're fighting the way nations fight when warfare becomes institutionalized. When militaries teach the proper way to do battle, when there are rules and traditions, Morrison frowned. And that's bad for them. It is if they're up against someone who doesn't follow the rules, Chen said. She pulled up a display showing Earth's own military history. Centuries of warfare, thousands of conflicts, wars fought in every possible way. From massive set-piece battles, to guerrilla actions, to urban combat, to cyber warfare. Wars where there were no rules. Where survival was the only goal. Where any tactic that worked was valid. Humanity spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other, Chen said quietly. We tried every possible way to wage war. We made mistakes. We learned from them. We developed doctrines written in blood. And then finally, we stopped fighting ourselves because we realized we were too good at it. We almost destroyed our own planet 3 times. She looked at her crew. The Galactic Council thinks we're primitives because our technology isn't as advanced. But technology doesn't win wars. Tactics win wars. Strategy wins wars. The willingness to do whatever it takes wins wars. Okonov caught on quickly. You're saying they've forgotten how to really fight. I'm saying they fight with honor. We fight to win. Chen's expression hardened. And right now, 40 million civilians need us to win in 6 hours. She turned to Morrison. Sound battle stations. All hands prepare for combat. FTL exit. Deploy all fighters the moment we arrive. Doctrine Omega is in effect. Morrison polled slightly. Doctrine Omega was humanity's no-holds-barred combat protocol. Everything was permitted. Every trick, every unconventional tactic, every piece of strategic ruthlessness that humanity had developed over millennia of warfare. It was the doctrine you used when you absolutely had to win, no matter the cost. "Aye, ma'am," Morrison said. "Doctrine Omega. May God help them." Chen pulled up the tactical display showing the Calv sector. 3 massive fleets, thousands of ships, 80 years of institutional warfare. "We're not there to help them, Commander," Ten said softly. "We're there to help the Thorian civilians. As for the fleets," and she smiled without humor, "they're about to get a lesson in how Earth does warfare." The Indomitable and its escort fleet jumped to FTL, racing toward a battle that had raged for 80 years. A battle that humanity was about to end in 60 seconds. Behind them, Earth's high command watched nervously. They had sent their best ship and their best admiral into impossible odds. 6 vessels against thousands. By every reasonable calculation, Cheney and her fleet were flying to their deaths. But humanity had stopped making reasonable calculations about warfare a long time ago. Somewhere in the dark between stars, racing at faster than light speeds toward the Calvex sector, Admiral Cheney sat in her command chair and reviewed the plan one more time. It was brutal. It was ruthless. It was probably going to get some of her people killed, but it would work. It had to work because 40 million people were counting on it. The journey to the Calv sector took 40 hours. 40 hours of traveling through the strange space between spaces where normal physics didn't quite apply, and the universe folded in on itself to let ships cross distances that should have taken years. On the TDS Indomitable, those 40 hours were not spent resting. Admiral Chen had ordered every department to prepare for combat. But this wasn't the normal kind of preparation. This wasn't checking weapons and running drills. This was something different. This was studying the enemy. In the carrier's main briefing room, Chen gathered her senior officers. The room was designed to hold 30 people, but today only 12 were present. 12 people who would be making decisions that would affect millions of lives. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okonkwo stood at the front, a holographic display floating in front of her. The display showed the Calve sector battle zone updated in real time from long-range sensor drones that the Council had deployed to monitor the conflict. "This is what we're walking into," Okonkwo said, her voice clear and professional. The display zoomed in, showing thousands of small icons representing ships. Current count 847 Thorian vessels, 923 Velk ships, and 1 Coin-14 Quink craft. Commander Morrison whistled low. 2,800 ships, and we're bringing 6, closer to 3,000 by the time we arrive, Okonkwo corrected. Both the Vel and Quinn are bringing in reinforcements. They want that planet badly. Chen studied the display. "Show me their formations." The hologram shifted, pulling back to show the overall tactical picture. The Thorian ships formed a defensive sphere around K-37, but it was a sphere with holes in it. The Velk fleet approached from Galactic north in a wedge formation, their strongest shields at the front. The Quinn came from the south in a broad line, their ships spaced evenly. "They're very organized," Captain Rodriguez from the destroyer Defiance observed. "Beautiful formations, actually. Like watching a ballet." "That's the problem," Chen said. "They're too organized." Okonov showed them the battle recordings from 3 weeks ago. The display changed, showing actual footage of combat between the 3 fleets. Ships lined up facing each other. Energy weapons lashed out in brilliant streams of light. Shields flared as they absorbed impacts. Ships exploded when their shields failed, blooming like deadly flowers in the darkness of space. It looked impressive. It looked powerful. But Chen saw something else. "Notice anything strange?" she asked her officers. They watched for a minute. Then Captain Yuki Tanaka from the frigate Apollo spoke up. "They're not moving much. I mean, they're adjusting position, but they're not maneuvering." "Not really exactly," Chen said. "They fight from fixed positions. They establish formations and hold them. It's like old wet Navy combat from Earth before we had missiles and submarines, ships of the line, trading broadsides."
Okono pulled up another display. It makes sense for their technology. The Velk shields work best when ships overlap their fields. They get stronger together, so they stay in tight formation. The Quinn consciousness sharing works better when they're close, so they group up too. The Thorans rely on numbers and covering fire, so they cluster. And clustering makes them predictable, Chen said.
Tactical. Bring up the debris field analysis. Okono pressed a control, and the display shifted again. This time it showed something that made several officers lean forward in surprise. Between the fleets, filling the space where most of the fighting had happened, was a massive cloud of wreckage. Destroyed ships, broken pieces of hull, dead engines, shattered weapons. 80 years of war had left a graveyard in space. How much material are we looking at? Chen asked. Conservative estimate 40,000 destroyed vessels. That's full ships, not counting the debris from partial destructions. In terms of total mass, Okonkwo did a quick calculation. Roughly 16 billion tons of metal, composite materials, and other substances, all floating in a rough sphere about 200,000 kilometers across. Morrison shook his head in disbelief. They've been fighting in the middle of a debris field for 80 years. Haven't they figured out that's dangerous? Why would they? Chen asked. The debris isn't moving fast. It's just floating there. Their shields can handle impacts from slow-moving objects. To them, it's like fighting in a junkyard. Messy, but not threatening. She smiled. And it wasn't a nice smile. To us, it's ammunition. The officers looked at each other. Chen could see understanding dawning on their faces. You want to weaponize the debris? Rodriguez said slowly. I want to turn their graveyard into our weapon, Chen corrected. Okono explained the kinetic strike package. Okono pulled up another display showing technical specifications. Human destroyers are equipped with kinetic penetrator rounds, simple tungsten rods 40 centimeters wide, 2 meters long. We accelerate them using magnetic rails to 15C, 15C. Tanaka repeated 15% the speed of light. Exactly. At that velocity, it doesn't matter how good your shields are. You can't dissipate that much kinetic energy. The math doesn't work. The rod punches straight through. Oka now highlighted the debris field. Now imagine what happens if we don't shoot the rods at ships. Imagine we shoot them at debris. Understanding rippled through the room. Each impact would turn debris into shrapnel, Morrison said. And at relativistic speeds, that shrapnel would tear through anything in its path. The debris is already spread throughout the battle zone, Rodriguez added. We wouldn't have to aim at individual ships. We'd just have to hit enough debris and let physics do the rest. Chen nodded. That's phase 1. Phase 2 involves our fighter wings. Show them the mine deployment pattern tactical. Okono brought up a simulation. It showed human fighters scattered across the battle zone in what looked like random patterns, but Chen knew it wasn't random at all. Each fighter would be precisely positioned in 3-dimensional space, part of a larger network. Each fighter carries 20 mine packages, Okono explained. These aren't traditional mines. They're small fusion warheads with basic maneuvering capability and friend or foe identification. Once deployed, they drift with minimal thrust, positioning themselves throughout the battle space. When activated, they all detonate simultaneously. How much damage are we talking? Asked Commander Sarah Kim from the destroyer Tempest. Each mine is roughly equivalent to a 5-kiloton nuclear device, Okono said. We'd be deploying approximately 3,000 mines, all detonating at once in a space filled with tightly clustered enemy ships. The room was silent for a moment. That's a Morrison started, then stopped. That's brutal. That's total warfare, Chen said flatly. This is what humanity learned how to do over 10,000 years of killing each other. We learned that honor is nice, but survival is better. We learned that the enemy who fights fair is the enemy who loses. She looked at each of her officers in turn. I know this seems harsh. I know it seems wrong. These aliens have been fighting for 80 years, but they've been fighting with rules, with traditions, with a concept of honorable combat. She pulled up an image of Key 37 showing the Thorian colony world. But 40 million civilians don't care about honor. They care about living. And we're going to make sure they do. Captain Rodriguez spoke carefully. Admiral, what about after? When the Council sees what we've done, when they realize we don't fight like they do, then they'll learn an important lesson. Chen said, they'll learn that humanity came to the stars, hoping never to use the things we learned on Earth, but we brought those lessons with us just in case. She paused. This is the just in case. The briefing continued for another 3 hours. Chen went over every detail of the plan. Every ship had specific assignments. Every pilot knew their role. Every contingency had a backup plan. When they were done, Chen dismissed everyone except Okono. You disagree with this, Chen said. It wasn't a question. Okonov considered her words carefully. I think it'll work, ma'am. The math checks out. The tactics are sound. We'll accomplish the mission, but we're going to kill a lot of people in 60 seconds. Okonow met her admiral's eyes. Ships don't just have weapons and engines. They have crews, people, individuals with families and hopes and dreams. We're going to end thousands of lives in 1 minute. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Yes, we are, and that's going to stay with us for the rest of our lives. Every decision I make in that minute, I'll remember. Every person who dies because I gave an order, I'll carry that. She turned to face her tactical officer directly. But here's what I know. If we don't do this, 40 million Thorian civilians die. If we don't do this, this war continues for another 80 years and billions more die in the fighting. If we don't do this, the galaxy continues to believe that the way they fight is the only way to fight, and more wars like this one break out. So, we become the monsters? Okonov asked quietly. So, we become the people willing to do monstrous things for the right reasons, Chen corrected. There's a difference. Monsters enjoy the killing. We don't, but we do it anyway because someone has to. Okonow was silent, processing this. If you want to transfer to a non-combat position, I'll approve it right now, Chen said. No questions asked. No mark on your record. I need you for this mission, but I won't force you to carry this weight if you can't. Okonow thought about it. Really thought about it. Then she shook her head. No, ma'am. I'm with you. If someone has to carry this weight better, it's people who understand what it means. Chen smiled sadly. Then let's go save 40 million people. The final hours before arrival were spent in preparation. Fighter pilots ran simulations. Weapons crews checked their systems obsessively. The destroyers loaded their kinetic penetrators. The frigates prepared for their high-speed run. In her quarters, Chen wrote letters, one for each member of her crew, to be delivered if she didn't make it back. She had written similar letters before every combat deployment in her career, but this time felt different. This time, she was almost certain some of her people wouldn't come home. The Mercury and Apollo, the two frigates, had the most dangerous assignment. They would dive through the Quinn formation at maximum speed, disrupting their carefully organized line and driving them into the minefield. The odds of both ships surviving were low. Chen had personally talked to both captains. Both had volunteered. Both understood they were probably flying to their deaths. That was the other thing humans had learned over millennia of warfare. Sometimes survival wasn't the goal. Sometimes you just had to complete the mission 6 hours before arrival. Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking out at the strange colors of FTL space. Commander Morrison joined her. The crew is ready. He said as ready as they can be anyway. Are we doing the right thing? James Chen asked. Morrison considered the question. I think we're doing the necessary thing. Whether it's right, I guess we'll find out. History will judge us. History always does, but history isn't the one making the call right now. You are. And for what it's worth, I trust your judgment. Chen appreciated that. Thank you. They stood in silence for a while, watching the color swirl past. Do you think it'll really work? Morrison asked. Ending the battle in 60 seconds. It has to. Chen said we're only going to get one chance. If we try conventional combat, we lose. We're outnumbered 500 to 1. Our only advantage is surprise and unconventional tactics. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we disappear before they can respond. And if it doesn't work, then we buy as much time as we can for those civilians to evacuate. And we hope someone writes a nice memorial for us. Morrison laughed despite the grim topic. You always did have a way with words, Admiral. The final hour approached. Chen returned to the bridge and took her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Nobody spoke unless necessary. The tension was thick enough to cut. All ships report ready, Morrison said. Fighter wings prepared for launch, reported the flight deck officer. Weapons hot, said the weapons officer. Tactical solutions loaded, Okonko added. Chen took a deep breath. Then let's go introduce the galaxy to human warfare. Helm, bring us out of FTL at the designated coordinates. All ships combat formation on my mark. I am FTL exit in 60 seconds. Chen pulled up the tactical display one more time. 3,000 enemy ships, 6 human vessels, 1 minute to change everything. This is Admiral Chen, way to all ships, she said, her voice broadcasting to every member of the fleet. In 60 seconds, we're going to do something that nobody expects. We're going to end an 80-year war in 1 minute. Not because we want to be heroes, not because we want glory, but because 40 million people need us to. She paused. Remember your training, follow your assignments, trust your crewmates, and most importantly, remember why we're here. We're here because someone called for help and humanity answered. That's what we do. That's who we are. FTL exit in 10 seconds, the helm officer announced. All hands battle stations, Chen ordered. Prepare for combat operations. The countdown reached 0. The human fleet dropped out of FTL space and into hell. The sensors on the bridge of the Indomitable screamed to life the moment they dropped out of FTL. 3,000 ships, maybe more. The display showed the Calvi sector battle in all its terrible glory. The Thorian defensive fleet, battered and desperate, formed a broken shell around their colony world. The Vel Empire pressed from the north with their organized wedge formation, shields overlapping like scales on a dragon. The Quinn Collective attacked from the south, their crystalline ships glowing with deadly energy, and in the middle of it all, floating like ghosts in a graveyard, were the remains of 80 years of warfare, broken ships, shattered hulls, the corpses of thousands of vessels that had died in this cursed sector. Position confirmed, the helm officer reported. We're exactly where we need to be, on the edge of the engagement zone. Chen studied the tactical display. The human fleet had emerged at the outer boundary of the battle, far enough that the fighting hadn't reached them yet. But that would change in seconds. Already, sensors from all 3 fleets were detecting the new arrivals. Open a wideband channel, Chen ordered. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Channel open, Admiral. Chen spoke clearly and calmly, her voice carrying across space to 3,000 alien warships. This is Admiral Cheney of the Terran Defense Fleet, acting under Galactic Council humanitarian protocols. You are ordered to cease fire and allow civilian evacuation. You have 30 seconds to comply. For a moment, there was silence. Then the responses started coming in. The Thorian matriarch responded first, her voice filled with desperate hope. Admiral Chen thanked the stars. We need at least 6 hours to complete evacuation. Can you? She was cut off by the Vel commander. His voice was cold, reptilian, and filled with contempt. Humans, you brought 6 ships to a battle of thousands. This is not your concern. Primitives, stand aside or be destroyed along with the Thorans. The Quinn response came as a chorus of voices. Thousands of individuals speaking with one mind. The humans are irrelevant. Catholic 7 must fall. The trade routes must be secured. You cannot stop the inevitable. Chen listened to all 3 responses. Then she closed the channel to the Thorans, keeping only the link to the Velcon Quinn open. I gave you 30 seconds, Chen said, her voice hard as steel. That time is up. You've chosen to continue this battle very well. Let me show you how humanity wages war. She cut the channel and turned to her bridge crew. Ladies and gentlemen, weapons free. Execute Doctrine Omega. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as every station began working at once. "Fighter wings launch all craft," Chen ordered. The Indomitable's launch bays opened like the jaws of a great beast. Fighters poured out in a swarm that looked nothing like the organized squadrons the aliens were used to. Human fighters didn't launch in neat formations. They launched tactically, each craft following a pre-programmed vector that would take them exactly where they needed to be. 147 fighters, 8 seconds from first launch to last. They scattered across the battlefield like angry hornets moving in 3 dimensions simultaneously. On the Velk flagship, Commander Sarvik watched the fighter launch with confusion. What are they doing? There's no organization to that. No formation at all. His tactical officer studied the scan data. "Commander, each fighter is following a completely independent flight path, but they're coordinated somehow. It's like they're part of a pattern we can't see yet." Sarvik dismissed it. 147 small craft against 3,000 capital ships. Madness. Continue the assault on the Thorian position. But then the human destroyers opened fire. The Defiance, Resolute, and Tempest had moved into firing position the moment they dropped from FTL. Their main weapons weren't laser batteries or plasma cannons like the aliens used. They were railguns, magnetic accelerators that could launch solid projectiles at enormous speeds. The tungsten rods screamed out from the destroyers at 15% of light speed. They crossed the distance to the debris field in less than a second. They didn't hit ships. They hit wreckage. A destroyed Velk cruiser, dead for 20 years, was struck by the first penetrator. The rod punched through the hull like it wasn't there and came out the other side. The impact transferred massive kinetic energy into the wreck. The dead ship exploded, not from any remaining fuel or weapons, but simply from the force of impact. The explosion sent pieces of the ship flying in all directions. Those pieces were now moving at dangerous speeds, and there were more pieces of wreckage all around them. The human destroyers fired again and again and again. Within 15 seconds, they had struck 30 pieces of large debris. Each impact created an expanding cloud of high-velocity shrapnel. The clouds overlapped. They merged. They turned the center of the battlefield into a storm of metal, moving at killing speeds. The Velk ships, packed tight in their formation for maximum shield efficiency, had nowhere to go. The first pieces of shrapnel hit the Velk wedge formation at the 20-second mark. Their shields flared, trying to dissipate the impacts, but these weren't slow-moving pieces of floating junk. This was debris moving at incredible velocity with all the kinetic energy that implied. A chunk of armor plating the size of a car hit a Velk destroyer's shield at 10,000 Talar kilometers. The shield failed. The plating continued through the ship's hull, through its interior, and out the other side. The destroyer vented atmosphere and began to spin out of control. And it wasn't alone. Across the Velk formation, ships were being hit. Shields were collapsing. Holes were breaching. Evasive maneuvers. Commander Sarvik screamed, "Break formation! Break formation now!" But breaking formation meant their shields would stop overlapping. It meant each ship would be vulnerable on its own, and the Vel had trained for 80 years to fight in formation. The change didn't come quickly enough. On the other side of the battlefield, the Quinn Collective was having its own problems. The human frigates Mercury and Apollo had begun their attack run at the 25-second mark. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't slow down. They simply accelerated to maximum speed and dove straight into the Quinn formation. It was insane. It was suicidal. The Quinn ships filled space with energy weapons, trying to destroy the frigates before they could get close. The Mercury was hit multiple times. Its forward shield collapsed. Then its hull was breached, but the ship's momentum carried it forward straight through the center of the Quinn line. The Quinn ships were forced to scatter. They couldn't maintain their organized formation with a human warship, flying through them at maximum combat speed. The crystalline vessels moved apart, trying to avoid collision, which pushed them directly into the area where the human fighters had been seeding mines. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the Mercury, watched her ship die around her. Hull breaches on 3 decks, engine room gone, life support failing, but she had made it through the Quinn formation. The Apollo was still intact, completing its own run. "All hands abandoned ship," Rodriguez ordered calmly.
Repeat all hands to escape pods. It's been an honor serving with you. She stayed at her post as her crew evacuated, keeping the ship on course for just a few more seconds, just long enough to complete the mission.
The Mercury exploded at the 40 mark. 23 crew members died with their captain, but they had done their job. The Quinn formation was broken. The mines activated. 3,000 fusion warheads, each one small but deadly, had been drifting throughout the battle space. The human fighters had placed them with mathematical precision over the last 30 seconds. Now, synchronized by the tactical computers on the Indomitable, they all detonated at once. The Quinn fleet, clustered close together so they could share consciousness across their ships, found themselves in the center of a nuclear firestorm. Crystalline hulls, beautiful and strong, shattered under the fusion blasts. The Quinn shared mind screamed in agony as hundreds of ships died at once. Individual Quinn by the millions linked together experienced death simultaneously. But Chen wasn't done. At the 50-second mark, she ordered the Indomitable to fire its main batteries. But again, she didn't target ships. She aimed at the atmosphere of Kethri 7. The carrier's plasma lances reached down through space and superheated a section of the upper atmosphere directly above the planet's major continent. The air literally began to boil. A massive thermal plume rose from the planet, a tower of heat and light that could be seen across the system. Every sensor on every ship in the battle zone was suddenly blinded by the heat signature. Targeting systems failed. Long-range scans became useless. The entire center of the battlefield became a confusion of thermal noise and electromagnetic interference. In that confusion, at the 58-second mark, 3,000 mines all detonated. The synchronized detonations created a cascade effect. Ships near the mines were destroyed instantly. Ships farther away had their shields collapse from the overlapping blasts. And in the center of it all, the debris field that the human destroyers had turned into a weapon continued to tear through anything in its path. The Velk fleet, proud and organized, lost 647 ships in those final seconds. Their formation shattered, their ships scattered. Those that survived were damaged, shields down, weapons offline. The Quinn fleet fared worse. 891 crystalline vessels were destroyed. The shared consciousness was traumatized by the sudden loss of so many individuals. The surviving ships stopped fighting entirely, their crews overwhelmed by the psychic backlash of mass death. Even the Thorian fleet took losses. Matriarch Zelves had received a coded transmission from Admiral Chen exactly 3 seconds before the main assault. The message was simple. Scatter now. The Thorans broke their defensive formation and dispersed as much as they could in 3 seconds. It saved thousands of lives, but they still lost 203 ships to the shrapnel storm and the mine detonations. At exactly the 60-second mark, the battle ended. Not because everyone was dead, not because one side had won, but because Admiral Cheney opened a channel and spoke into the sudden silence. The evacuation corridor is now open. You have 6 hours. Any ship that fires a weapon will be destroyed. Are we clear? Nobody responded. Nobody dared. On the Velk flagship, Commander Sarvik stared at his tactical display in shock. 647 ships gone. In 1 minute, his formation was destroyed. His fleet was crippled, and the humans still had all 6 ships operational on the Quinn command vessel. The collective struggled to process what had happened. So many minds lost. So much death, all at once. They couldn't fight. They could barely think. On the Thorian flagship, Matriarch Zelves looked at her sensors and felt something she hadn't felt in 40 years of warfare. Fear, not fear of her enemies, fear of her allies. The humans had just done something that 3 advanced civilizations fighting for 80 years had never managed. They had ended a major battle in 60 seconds without superior technology, without overwhelming numbers. They had done it with tactics that no council species had used in thousands of years. Brutal, ruthless, efficient tactics that treated space warfare not as an honorable duel, but as a problem to be solved. And they had solved it. Admiral Chen sat in her command chair, watching the tactical display. The 3 fleets were in chaos. Ships drifted without direction. The mines had all been used. The debris field was settling. The thermal bloom from the planet was fading. It was over. "Status report," she said quietly. Commander Morrison read the numbers, his voice shaking slightly. 1 frigate destroyed. The Mercury is gone with all hands. 23 crew lost. The Apollo is heavily damaged but intact. 14 fighters destroyed. 14 pilots lost. All other ships operational, but need repairs. 37 dead. 37 people who had followed Chen's orders into battle and never came home. Chen felt the weight of each death settle on her shoulders. She would carry them for the rest of her life. "Open a channel to the Thorian matriarch," Chen ordered. The channel opened. Matriarch Zelvis appeared on the screen, her compound eyes wide. "The corridor is clear, Matriarch," Chen said. "Begin your evacuation. We'll maintain position and ensure no one interferes." Admiral Chen. Zelvis struggled to find words. "What? What did you just do?" Chen's expression was hard. "I completed my mission. 40 million civilians need to evacuate. They have 6 hours. Nothing else matters." She cut the channel and turned to her crew. "Maintain combat readiness. If anyone so much as powers up a weapon, I want to know about it immediately." The bridge crew worked in silence around the Indomitable. The human fleet held position. 5 ships and 133 fighters standing guard over a corridor of peace in the middle of a war zone and throughout the Kav sector. On 3,000 ships belonging to 3 great civilizations, people were starting to understand something important. Humanity had just introduced the galaxy to something it had forgotten existed. Real warfare. Total warfare. Warfare without rules or honor or tradition. Warfare where the only goal was to win, and humanity had won in 60 seconds. The evacuation began 20 minutes after the battle ended. Thorian transport ships rose from K-37 by the hundreds. Massive vessels designed to carry thousands of civilians each. They filled with refugees from the cities below, parents with their children, the elderly, the sick. Anyone who could walk or be carried made their way to the transports. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Indomitable. The human fleet maintained its position at the edge of the evacuation corridor. Weapons armed and ready, but there was no need to fire. Nobody challenged them. Nobody even came close. The 3 alien fleets had pulled back. They were regrouping, counting their losses, trying to understand what had happened. Commander Morrison approached Chen with a data pad. "Preliminary damage assessment is complete, Admiral. The numbers are significant." Chen took the pad and read, "Velk Empire, 647 ships destroyed, 218 severely damaged. Quinn Collective 891 ships lost, 307 damaged, beyond combat capability. Thorian Confederacy, 203 vessels destroyed, 97 damaged, over 1,700 ships out of action. More than half the total fleet strength that had been in the sector in 60 seconds. "What about us?" Chen asked. "The Mercury is gone. The Apollo needs 6 months of repairs. We lost 14 fighters. Total casualties, 37 dead, 62 wounded." Morrison paused. "We accomplished the mission with less than 1% casualties. The numbers should have felt like a victory. They weren't. Each casualty was a person, someone with a family, with dreams, with a life that had ended because Chen gave an order." "Make sure every family gets a personal message from me," Chen said. "And I want to visit each one in person when we get back to Earth." "Yes, ma'am." Chen returned her attention to the evacuation. The transports continued to rise from the planet. 3 hours had passed. They were halfway done. On the Thorian flagship Hive's Wrath, Matriarch Zelvis sat in her command chamber with her senior tactical advisors. They had been reviewing the battle data for 2 hours. "Play it again," she ordered. The holographic display showed the 60 seconds of combat from the Thorian perspective. Her advisors had broken it down moment by moment, analyzing every human action. "They didn't fight a battle," her chief tactician said. His voice held a mixture of awe and horror. "They executed an operation. Every action was calculated for maximum effect. Every shot had a purpose. Another advisor spoke up. The humans studied us. They knew how we would respond. They knew the Velk would stay in formation. They knew the Quinn would cluster together. They exploited our strengths as weaknesses. The debris field. Selves said, "We've been fighting in that graveyard for 80 years. We never thought to weaponize it because it never occurred to us, matriarch. In proper warfare, you target enemy vessels. You don't turn the battlefield itself into a weapon." He struggled for the word univalized. Sylvestre made a clicking sound that indicated dark amusement. And yet it worked. In 1 minute, they accomplished what we haven't managed in 80 years. They ended the battle. She pulled up another display. This one showing human military history, Earth's conflicts, wars that had lasted years, decades, even centuries. Billions of humans killing each other with every weapon imaginable. "Look at this," she said to her advisors. "This is their history. They fought wars of extinction against themselves. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They learned every possible way to kill." She paused. "And then they stopped. They unified. They came to the stars hoping to never use those lessons again, but they brought the lessons with them." The chief tactician said, "Yes, they did." Selves looked at the evacuation data. 4 hours complete now. Almost done. We called for help, and they answered. They could have refused. They could have come and fought conventionally and died. Instead, they came and won. She made her decision. Open a channel to Admiral Chen. The human admiral appeared on the screen. She looked tired. Zelvis wondered if humans felt the weight of death the same way Thorans did. Matriarch Chen said with a respectful nod. "Admiral, the evacuation is nearly complete. 40 million of my people will live because of your actions. I want you to know that the Thorian Confederacy will not forget this debt." Chen's expression softened slightly. "You don't owe us anything, Matriarch. We answered a humanitarian call." "That's what Council members do, is it?" Zelves asked. "The Council has ignored this sector for 80 years. They sent humanitarian aid, but never intervened. You intervened. You stopped the battle. We did what was necessary." Selves studied the human carefully. "I have reviewed your military history, Admiral. I know what your species is capable of. You showed remarkable restraint today. You could have destroyed all 3 fleets completely." "That wasn't the mission," Chen said simply. "The mission was to open an evacuation corridor. We did exactly that, using the minimum force necessary." Minimum force. Zelves clicked in dark amusement again. "You destroyed over 1,700 ships and spared the other 1,300. We could have killed them all." Chen's voice was hard. "We chose not to. That's the difference between us and what we could be." The channel closed. Zelves sat back in her command chair thinking about those words. Humans were warriors who chose peace. That made them more dangerous than warriors who only knew war. On the Velk flagship Pride of the Empire, Commander Sarvix was having a very different conversation. "This is unacceptable," he roared at his staff. "We are the Vel Empire. We have the finest military tradition in the galaxy, and we were humiliated by primitives." His chief weapons officer spoke carefully. "Commander, with respect, they are not primitives. Their tactics were sophisticated, brutal but sophisticated." Sarvix slammed his clawed hand on the console. "They cheated. They used the debris field as a weapon. They sent ships on suicide runs. They violated every principle of honorable combat." Perhaps his tactical officer said, "But they won. In 60 seconds, they achieved what should have been impossible." Sarvix wanted to argue, but he couldn't. The data was clear. The human fleet had executed a perfect attack. Every element had worked together. Every ship had played its role. And the Velk formation, perfect by every military standard, had been torn apart. "Pull up their military history," he ordered. The display showed conflicts from Earth. Wars that made Sarvix's blood run cold. Weapons of mass destruction used on civilian populations, entire cities burned, tactics that ignored every concept of honor. His tactical officer pointed to one particular conflict. This one is called World War II. 60 million humans died. They fought in every environment imaginable. They developed tactics for urban warfare, submarine warfare, aerial bombardment, amphibious assault. They learned how to fight in ways we abandoned thousands of years ago. Why would they fight like that? Sarvix asked. Without honor, without rules, because they were fighting for survival. When species fight wars of extinction, honor becomes a luxury they can't afford. Sarvix stared at the data, at the casualty counts, at the weapons, at the sheer brutality of human warfare. They're not fighting for extinction now, he said. They're part of the Council. They've joined galactic civilization. Yes, Commander, but they remember. They know how to fight without rules. And today, they showed us what that means. Sarvix dismissed his staff and sat alone in his command chamber. His fleet was crippled. His formation was broken. His pride was shattered. But worse than all of that was the knowledge that the humans had held back. They could have done so much worse. Admiral Chen had said it herself. Minimum force necessary. If this was minimum force, what did maximum force look like? For the first time in his long military career, Commander Sarvik felt fear of an enemy. The Quinn Collective's response was different from both the Thorans and the Velk. The Quinn shared a collective consciousness. When one Quinn experienced something, they all experienced it. When one Quinn died, they all felt the loss. 891 ships meant millions of individual Quinn, all dying at once, all connected, all sharing their death with the rest of the collective. It had nearly broken them. In the aftermath, the collective struggled to process what had happened. Individual Quinn minds argued with each other in the shared consciousness. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted to withdraw completely. Some wanted to understand. Gradually, a consensus formed. The collective decided to analyze the human attack from every angle. They reviewed the tactical data. They studied human history. They examined every decision Admiral Chen had made. And slowly, they began to understand the humans had identified the Quinn's fundamental weakness. The collective shared consciousness worked best when Quinn ships stayed close together. So the humans had driven them together, then detonated fusion weapons in their midst. The humans had known this would cause maximum casualties. They had planned for it. They had executed it perfectly. It was the most precise application of violence the Quinn had ever witnessed. In their shared consciousness, the collective reached a conclusion. The humans were not simply warriors. They were something more dangerous. They were problem solvers who used warfare as a tool. When the Quinn encountered a problem, they thought about it collectively and found a solution through consensus. When humans encountered a problem, they studied it, identified weaknesses, and exploited those weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. The collective made a decision. They would not fight humans ever. The cost was too high. 6 hours after the battle, the last transport rose from Cath 7, 40 million Thorian civilians saved. Admiral Chen received the confirmation and allowed herself to feel relief. The mission was complete. They had done it. Prepare for FTL jump, she ordered. We're going home. Admiral Commander Morrison said, We're receiving communication requests from all 3 fleets. They want to talk about what happened. Tell them to contact Earth through official channels. Chen said, We're not diplomats. We're a military fleet, and our mission is complete. The human ships formed up and jumped to FTL, leaving the Kalvak sector behind. But the news of what had happened traveled faster than light. Within hours, the Galactic Council knew about the Battle of Cathri 7. Within days, every major civilization had reviewed the tactical data. Within weeks, the battle was being taught in every military academy in known space. The 1-minute war, they called it. And humanity's reputation changed forever. Before Cathric 7, humans were seen as naive newcomers, primitives with crude technology and simple minds, species to be tolerated and taught. After Cathric 7, humans were seen as something else entirely, dangerous, capable, ruthless when necessary, but also restrained, careful, precise warriors who chose peace, but remembered war. The Galactic Council called an emergency session 3 weeks after the battle. The debate was fierce. Some council members argued that humanity had violated the principles of civilized warfare, that their tactics were barbaric and should be condemned. Others argued that humanity had accomplished exactly what the council had failed to do for 80 years. They had ended a war. They had saved millions of lives, and they had done it without conquering territory or demanding tribute. Matriarch Zelves spoke to the council, her voice carrying across the chamber. I called for help, and humanity answered. They came with 6 ships to face 3,000. They could have refused. They could have failed. Instead, they succeeded. 40 million of my people live because Admiral Cheney made hard choices. She paused, looking at each council member. You want to condemn them for their methods? Fine. But remember this. When your people need help, when your civilians are dying, when you call for aid, would you want them to refuse because you once called them barbaric? The debate continued for hours. Finally, a vote was called.
The motion to censure humanity for their tactics failed. The motion to commend humanity for their humanitarian intervention passed. And a new motion was raised, one that changed the galaxy forever. From this day forward, the Terran Defense Fleet would be authorized to act as peacekeepers in Council space. When conflicts threatened civilian lives, humanity could intervene. It passed unanimously. Admiral Cheney learned about the vote while the Indomitable was still 3 days from Earth. She stood on the observation deck looking at the stars, thinking about what it meant. Humanity had come to the stars, hoping to explore, to learn, to make friends. Instead, they had become the galaxy's enforcers, the ones you called when peace needed to be made by force. Commander Morrison found her there. Penny, for your thoughts. I'm wondering if we did the right thing, Chen said. Not the battle that was necessary, but we showed them what we're capable of. We showed them that humans know how to wage total war. What happens when some civilization decides to test that? Morrison considered it. Then they learned the same lesson the Vel and Quinn learned, that humanity really doesn't want to fight. But if you force us to, we're terrifyingly good at it. Chen smiled without humor. Deterrence through superior capability. It's kept Earth peaceful for 40 years. Maybe it'll work for the galaxy, too. They stood together watching the stars, thinking about the future humanity had just created. Behind them, the crew of the Indomitable continued their duties. They were heroes now, whether they wanted to be or not. They were the people who had ended an 80-year war in 60 seconds, and they carried the weight of that accomplishment along with the memory of 37 names. 37 people who had died so that 40 million could live. That was the price of peace. That was the burden of power. And that was the lesson humanity had learned long ago on Earth. Sometimes the only way to stop a war is to be better at fighting it than anyone else. The galaxy was learning that lesson now. 3 months after the Battle of K-37, the war ended. Not with a climactic final battle, not with a grand surrender ceremony. It ended with a quiet meeting in a conference room aboard the Indomitable, orbiting a neutral world halfway between the territories of the 3 powers. Matriarch Zelves represented the Thorian Confederacy. Commander Savix came for the Vel Empire. A delegation of Quinn, their crystalline bodies pulsing with soft light, spoke for the collective. Admiral Cheney sat at the head of the table, not as a participant, but as a witness, a reminder of what would happen if the peace talks failed. The negotiations took 3 days. Old grudges came up, ancient territorial disputes, economic grievances that went back decades. But every time the talks threatened to break down, every time someone reached for their weapon console, they remembered. They remembered 60 seconds. They remembered what humanity could do when peace failed. The treaty was signed on the 3rd day. The Calvi sector would be demilitarized. Trade routes would be shared. The 3 powers would establish a joint council to resolve future disputes. It wasn't perfect. Old hatreds don't disappear overnight, but it was peace. Real peace.
For the first time in 80 years, Admiral Chen watched the signing ceremony and felt no triumph. Only exhaustion and the weight of 37 names that she carried with her every day. After the ceremony, Matriarch Zelves approached her privately. "Admir Chen, I wanted to thank you again, not just for saving my people, but for forcing us to stop fighting." Chen nodded politely. "I hope the peace holds, Matriarch." "So do I, but I must ask you something." Zelves leaned closer. "You demonstrated something at Kendrick 7. You showed us that humanity understands warfare at a level we had forgotten, but you also showed restraint. You stopped when you could have continued. Why?" Ten was quiet for a moment. "Because destruction is easy, Matriarch. Any fool with a weapon can destroy. The hard part is knowing when to stop, knowing when enough is enough. Is that a human philosophy? It's a lesson we learned the hard way. We spent 10,000 years destroying each other. We got very good at it. Too good. We nearly ended our own species 3 times. Chen's voice was heavy. "So, we made a choice. We decided that just because we could destroy something didn't mean we should. We decided that true strength is using just enough force to achieve your goal, then stopping." Zelves clicked thoughtfully. "You came to the stars hoping to never use those lessons again. Yes, but we brought them with us just in case." Chen smiled sadly. This was the just in case. Back on Earth, humanity was dealing with its new reputation. The Battle of Cathri 7 was analyzed endlessly. News programs showed the footage over and over. Military analysts broke down every second of the engagement. Politicians debated what it meant for Earth's role in galactic affairs. Some people were proud. Humanity had proven it could stand with the great powers of the galaxy. They had saved lives and ended a war. Others were concerned. They worried about what would happen when other conflicts arose. Would humanity be expected to intervene every time? Would Earth's children be sent to die in alien wars? Admiral Chen was called to testify before the United Earth Assembly. She stood before the representatives of every nation and region on the planet and answered their questions. "Admiral Chen," said the representative from the Asian coalition, "you accomplished an incredible military victory, but you also revealed to the galaxy that humanity knows how to wage total war. Some people worry this makes us a target. What do you say to those concerns?" Chen chose her words carefully. "I say they're right to worry. We are a target now. Not because we're weak, but because we're strong. Strong in ways that other species haven't seen in thousands of years." She paused. "But being strong and being aggressive are not the same thing. We showed the galaxy what we can do. Now we have to show them what we choose not to do." "And what's that?" asked the representative from the African Union. "We choose not to conquer. We choose not to dominate. We choose not to use our capabilities unless absolutely necessary." Chen's voice was firm. "Humanity learned something important in our history. Military power without restraint leads to destruction. True power is having the capability to destroy and choosing not to." The representative from the European Federation spoke next. "You're saying we should be the galaxy's peacekeepers." "I'm saying the galaxy has given us that role whether we want it or not. After Cathri 7, when conflicts arise, people will look to humanity. They'll wonder if we'll intervene. That gives us influence. That gives us power." Chen looked at the assembly. "The question is, what do we do with that power?" The debate in the assembly went on for weeks. Finally, they reached a decision. Earth would accept the role of peacekeeper, but with strict conditions. Humanity would only intervene when civilian lives were at risk. Only when invited by legitimate authorities, only when peaceful solutions had failed. They called it the Chen Doctrine, though the Admiral herself protested the name Fleet Admiral Chen Wei. She had been promoted after Cath 7, given command of Earth's entire military. It was an honor she hadn't wanted, but couldn't refuse. Her first act as Fleet Admiral was to visit the families of the 37 people who had died at Cathri 7. She went to each home personally. She sat with parents who had lost children, with partners who had lost their loves, with children who had lost parents. She told them exactly what had happened. She told them why their loved ones had died. She told them that it mattered. The family of Captain Maria Rodriguez, who had gone down with the Mercury, invited Chen to dinner. Rodriguez's husband, David, and their 2 teenage children sat with Chen in their small apartment in Buenos Aires. She volunteered, David said quietly. Maria always said that if the mission needed someone, she would go. That was who she was, Chen nodded. She saved millions of lives. The Mercury's run broke the Quinn formation. Without that, the entire operation would have failed. Rodriguez's daughter, Sophia, asked the question that Chen dreaded. Was it worth it? Was saving those aliens worth my mom's life? Chen didn't look away. She met the girl's eyes directly. I don't know if I can answer that in a way that helps. Your mother was worth everything. Every life is, but she believed that saving other lives was worth the risk. She made that choice freely. Do you think she made the right choice? Sophia asked. I think she made the brave choice, and I think 40 million people are alive today because of it. Does that make it worth it? That's something you'll have to decide for yourself. They talked for hours. Chen answered every question. She shared stories about Captain Rodriguez that the family hadn't heard. She promised to establish a memorial fund in Rodriguez's name. When she left, David walked her to the door. Thank you for coming, Admiral. It means something that you took the time. It's the least I could do. Chen said, I gave the orders. I carry the responsibility. You carry the weight well. David said Maria would have appreciated that. Chen repeated this visit 37 times. It took 3 months. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, but it was also the most important. Across the galaxy, the impact of K-37 continued to spread. Military MEs from dozens of species studied the battle. They called it the 1-minute war, and it became required learning for any tactical officer. The lessons were clear. Humans compartmentalize warfare. They separate civilian from military targets. Humans use their environment as a weapon. They don't just fight in space. They fight with space. Humans study their enemies and exploit weakness without mercy or hesitation. Humans plan for exact outcomes, not extended campaigns. But the most important lesson was this. Humans remember. They carry the knowledge of 10,000 years of warfare, and they will use it if forced. The political impact was just as significant. When border disputes arose, when trade conflicts heated up, when old grudges threatened to explode into violence, someone would always say, do we really want the humans to solve this for us? It became a shorthand for asking whether people wanted outside intervention, whether they wanted their war to end in 60 seconds. Usually, the answer was no, which meant they found peaceful solutions instead. Humanity became the galaxy's referee, not because they wanted the role, but because everyone else was afraid of what would happen if they forced humanity to intervene. It was deterrence on a galactic scale. Commander Sarvik of the Vel Empire had spent 3 months studying humanity. He read their history. He watched their entertainment. He tried to understand how a species could be so contradictory. Humans created beautiful art and terrible weapons. They wrote poetry about love and tactical manuals about efficient killing. They built cities of glass and steel, then practiced urban warfare techniques for destroying those same cities. Finally, he decided to visit Earth himself. He arrived on a diplomatic visa with a small security detail. He toured the capital. He met with government officials. He saw the museums and monuments. And then he asked to visit a specific place. The Memorial Garden sat in the center of Geneva, where the United Earth government was headquartered. It was a peaceful place with trees and flowers and quiet paths. In the center stood a monument, 37 names carved in stone. The crew of the Mercury and the 14 pilots who had died at HFY. Commander Sarvik stood before the monument for a long time. His security detail waited at a respectful distance. Fleet Admiral Chen found him there. She had heard about his visit and guessed where he would go. Commander, she said politely. Admiral. Sarvix didn't look away from the monument. I wanted to see this to understand. Understand what? How you can be so deadly and so careful at the same time. How you can destroy my fleet in 60 seconds and then mourn your own losses so deeply. Chen stood beside him, looking at the names she knew by heart. Because they're not contradictory, Commander. They're connected. We're deadly because we know the cost. We're careful because we've paid it too many times. I don't understand humans, Sarvix admitted. Most humans don't understand humans either, Chen said with a slight smile. We're complicated. We can be the best and worst of things sometimes at the same time. Sarvix finally turned to face her. I came to Earth to learn if you're a threat to the Vel Empire, to determine if we should build defenses against you, form alliances to counter your power. And what have you decided? That you're the most dangerous species in the galaxy and the safest. Sarvix gestured to the monument. You're dangerous because you know how to wage total war. You're safe because you choose not to. You're dangerous because you're ruthless. You're safe because you're restrained. We're just trying to do the right thing, Chen said. We don't always succeed, but we try. That's what makes you terrifying. Sarvix said, You actually mean it. He left Earth the next day. His report to the Vel Empire simple. Do not provoke humanity. Do not test their patience. Do not make them choose war. A year after Cath 7, the Galactic Council held a ceremony to honor the human fleet that had ended the war. Fleet Admiral Chen attended with the survivors of the battle. The crew of the Indomitable and its escort vessels stood at attention as speakers from across the galaxy praised their actions. Matriarch Zelves spoke about the 40 million lives saved. The Quinn representative acknowledged that humanity had taught them a valuable lesson about humility. Even Commander Sarvik grudgingly admitted that humanity had accomplished something remarkable. But Chen's mind was elsewhere. She thought about Captain Rodriguez going down with her ship, about the 14 pilots who had flown into the minefield knowing some wouldn't return, about the 37 names carved in stone back on Earth. When it was her turn to speak, Chen kept it brief. We did what we had to do. We don't celebrate it. We honor those who died making it possible, and we hope we never have to do it again. The ceremony ended. Dignitaries returned to their ships. Life went on. That evening, Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking at the stars. Lieutenant Commander Okinawa found her there. You okay, Admiral? Just thinking, Chen said. A year ago, we were unknowns, the primitive humans who barely knew how to travel between stars. Now we're the species everyone fears and respects. Does it bother you? Sometimes. I came to space to explore, to see new things, to meet alien species and learn from them. Chen smiled sadly. Instead, I showed them how to kill efficiently. You showed them how to stop killing, Okinawa corrected. The war is over. The sector is at peace. Millions of people are alive who would be dead, at the cost of 37 of our own. Yes, and we carry that. We remember them. That's what separates us from the monsters, Admiral. Monsters don't care about the cost. We do, Chen thought about that. About the families she had visited. About the memorial garden. About the weight she carried every single day. Do you think we did the right thing? She asked. I think we did the necessary thing, and we did it with as much restraint as possible. We could have destroyed all 3 fleets. We chose not to. That matters, does it? We still killed thousands. Yes. And saved millions. Both things are true. Both things will always be true. Okona looked at the stars. That's the burden of power, Admiral. You don't get clean choices. You get necessary choices, and you live with them. They stood in silence, watching the galaxy turn. Somewhere out there, people lived in peace because of what humanity had done. Children grew up safe. Families stayed together. Wars that might have started never did, because people remembered what happened when humans intervened. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was something. Fleet Admiral Chenwei returned to her quarters and wrote her daily log entry. She did this every night, recording her thoughts for history. 1 year since Galactic 7, she wrote, "The galaxy sees us differently now. They respect our power. They fear our capabilities. They appreciate our restraint." She paused, thinking about what to write next. But the most important thing we showed them is this. Humanity came to the stars hoping to never use the lessons we learned on Earth. We wanted to explore, to learn, to grow. We didn't want to be warriors. But when we had to be, we were the best warriors the galaxy had seen in millennia. Not because we're stronger or smarter or better equipped, but because we remember. We remember every mistake, every innovation, every tactic that worked, and every strategy that failed. We remember 10,000 years of warfare. And we carry that knowledge with us, hoping never to use it again, but ready to use it if we must. Chen closed the log and looked at the photo she kept on her desk. The crew of the Mercury. 23 faces smiling for the camera before their final mission. She touched the frame gently. "You made it matter," she whispered. "I promise you that." In the years that followed, humanity's reputation as peacekeepers grew. 3 more times, Chen led fleets into conflict zones. 3 more times, the mere presence of human ships convinced combatants to negotiate rather than fight. Earth built more ships, trained more crews, prepared for conflicts they hoped would never come. And across the galaxy, in military mize and government chambers, in peace negotiations and treaty discussions, people remembered the lesson of Galactic 7, that humanity was the species that knew how to wage total war, but chose not to.